I don't think we let ourselves just be idiots often enough.
We don't? I feel like that's our core competency.
So I was using my iPhone today. I was sitting at, I would guess, 30% battery life. I am aware that you can turn on battery percentage. I think that is the mark of a lunatic because all that does is stress me out when it's on. I'd rather not know. So anyway, so I was sitting at, I would guess, about a third battery life. And I go to record a video of Declan. We were walking around outside. And as I'm recording the video, it's not that I was framing it. I'm actively recording the video. All of a sudden, the phone turns off. Okay. That in and of itself is unfortunately common, but that was weird. But okay, so I go to turn the phone back on.
Wait. That's common?
Well, common enough that weird. It's I don't want to say functional high ground, but it felt like a functional high ground sort of occurrence, right? Like, oh, that was weird, but I'm sure once it reboots itself, everything will be fine.
Okay, your Windows recency is showing. Like that is not acceptable behavior. Like that is not normal.
Yeah, well, before the show, we were just talking about how you rebooting your iMac fixed everything, but that's neither here nor there.
Yeah, I didn't say that was right either.
So I go to start the phone back up, and it tells me, no, I won't, because your battery's dead. What? You know what I'm talking about? Like I will not start until you plug it in?
Yeah, the little like battery with the red line and black screen, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm like, that's weird. I was just at 30%. So I do the hold both buttons until it force restarts itself dance, and it starts back up, and I'm back at 30%. Okay, that was really weird, but I'll roll with it. And then I go to record a video again. Same exact thing happened.
Mm-hmm.
Except this time it didn't want to turn itself back on.
Yeah, your battery is toast. I've heard of this. A lot of people have had this problem with many different models of iPhone in the past, that exactly the same symptoms. You get your battery down to something that's below half, but not really, really low. And then it's just like, nope, no battery for you. And the same thing, like sometimes it'll come back like, oh, here I am again, 20%. You got to take that in. That is a very common symptom. And I don't know what it is. It could just be a bad battery that just can't maintain the voltage. And once it gets below a certain level, the phone is just like, so much for that. But then you bring it back and it's like, oh, I can maintain the voltage now. Oh, not really, I can't. You just got to bring it in. Don't bother. Like some people, John Roderick, who live with this for like a year or more and accept it as just like, this darn phone. It's like, that's like Marco said, that's not the way it's supposed to work. You have to bring that in. Tell them the symptoms. I'm sure they've heard it a million times before because this is a common symptom.
There is one exception, though, that is also almost exactly the same behavior you get during hot or cold thermal shutdown.
Yeah. Obviously temperature stuff, but I'm assuming it's spring. It's like it's not too hot, not too cold. I assume that you hadn't left it in the sun on the dashboard of your car before using it.
No, we had just gone for a walk, about a 1.5 mile walk. It was in my jeans pocket. There was no, I mean, it's humid out because it's been raining for the last year, but no, there was nothing environmental that should have caused it. What I've done is I've left it plugged in and plan to leave it plugged in all night just to see. This is before we had this conversation, but I thought, well, maybe it's just like not calibrated or something like that. So I'll leave it plugged in all night. Well, I mean, I always leave it plugged in all night long, but I'll be really diligent about leaving it plugged in, and we'll see if that changes it. But it sounds like I'm making a trip to the Genius Bar.
Typical Windows. Blame yourself. Just defrag it first. You didn't update your Windows Update virus definitions. It's your fault. It's totally your fault.
But aren't you happy now? Like, if I had something like this happen, especially on a device that I've had for a while, I'd be like, oh yes, new battery. Your battery's getting old anyway. How many cycles has it been through? You're going to get a fresh new battery, assuming you're still under warranty.
Well, I mean, it's a 6S, so yeah, I'm still under warranty. But what that also means is I got to go to the Genius Bar. Yeah. I've got to do the backup dance. I've got to convince them that this is an actual issue that isn't my fault, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, like I said, I'm sure they're well versed in this exact problem and have a procedure. And you are not the first person to tell them it'll be fine.
I will say though, it really when I first saw this doing thermal shutdown. It was on Tiff's phone this past winter when she was trying to take videos of our kid playing in the snow in the high 20s or low 30s Fahrenheit.
Yep.
And the phone, like after a couple seconds of shooting video, it just kept shutting down on her. And we thought it was broken. And I was like, oh, we got to bring it in. And then once we came inside, and the problem could never be reproduced at room temperature. And we were like, oh. And I looked up and I figured out that's actually expected behavior that I guess all those videos you see in Apple commercials, like the shot on iPhone where people are like on ski vacations, I guess they're taking really short shots.
No, you have to keep the phone. You can't keep the phone in a pocket that's essentially outdoors. Like if your pockets are, if your pockets get cold, in other words, you have to have it in a pocket that's sort of the inside of the body heat part of it, because that's all they really. It's not as if your phone freezes solid within 20 seconds. It's already frozen when it's in your pocket, and you take it out and it just goes that a little extra bit. So you really have to either keep it inside your glove or someplace closer to your body so that the phone stays at more or less body or room temperature. Then you get a long time before it freezes solid into a brick of inert lithium-ion battery. Or you can get one of those, those little hand warmer thingies, the little shaky packets with the chemical stuff that they give off heat. Someone should sell a case like that. You've already got the big lump for the battery case. How about the heat case for the winter?
Then it would get hot thermal shutdown.
Well, it doesn't. They don't get that hot. Those things are,
Yeah, so the hand warmer things are the things that people who live in ridiculous climates use, right? So you guys use that all the time?
Skiers use it. Oh, the best is, I don't remember, someone in the chat room would remember this. Before the age of the chemical packets that you would put in your pocket, that, you'd start a reaction and they would get warm. Not hot, but, warm. Like they're not burning your hands because they'd have lawsuits. They had these things that were kind of like metal clamshell things that had inside them essentially burning embers. Like not open flames, but burning embers to give off heat. It sounds like the most dangerous thing you could possibly imagine. And that was the old tech. And that was much worse. So the new stuff is considerably safer and more civilized.
Was it airtight, sealed in there, or how did that?
My recollection was that there was like a clamshell, or looked more kind of like a compact or a snuff box or something, and the little burning ember things you could get at by opening and closing it that way. But you'd use it closed and just had a metal outside that would radiate the heat.
Weird.
It sounds like some kind of crazy contraption from your drug days, John.
Yeah, my drug days, right? This is the beginning of the ad.
Our first sponsor this week is Fracture. Fracture prints photos in vivid color directly onto glass. These colors pop like you won't believe, and it comes in a solid backing. It's made of kind of like this thin foam board behind the glass layer. So it's very, very strong, but yet also very lightweight. So you don't have to worry about this giant pane of glass hanging on your wall, pulling the wall hanger out, because they're very light for their size. And the front of them is just this thin piece of glass with the photo printed on the back so it shines through. And it just looks fantastic. This is the best way to get photos printed and hang them up or put on a desk or send them to people for gifts or whatever else. I have these all over my office. Friends use them. Other podcasters I know use them themselves because they sponsored their shows first and they found them out, and they're just so good. And we always get compliments on our Fracture prints whenever people are at our house. I mean, I have something like, 7 of them around the office right now. They're everywhere, and I've sent probably 5 or 6 more as gifts. They're just great. Go to fractureme.com to see for yourself. The prices are very reasonable on these, and you can use code ATP10 to get an additional 10% off their regular prices. Really, if you have some photos to print, and honestly, you should be printing photos, because these days, you post photos on Facebook or Instagram, if you can find it on Instagram anymore with that crazy icon, but you post photos on Facebook or Instagram or whatever else, and you see them for a day, and then they're just buried in the feed. So with Fracture, you can have those photos live longer. And you can give them as gifts. You can have them kind of elevated to a more prominent place in your house, in your vision, in your life. It's just a great way to remember great photos and to give them as gifts as well. So check it out today. Go to fractureme.com. This is run by fine people in Gainesville, Florida. Everything's hand-checked for quality by real people, so you always get good stuff. I've never had one break. I've never heard of one breaking during shipping. They're really good. No worries here. I use them, recommend them. They're awesome. Fractureme.com, code ATP10 to save 10%. Thanks a lot.
And this is the end of the ad.
Anonymous has written in and said, can you please address the business model behind Tesla's offering to unlock, and that's in scare quotes, physical features already in the car, like battery capacity otherwise locked down? It seems worrisome that an in-app purchase strategy is spilling over into hardware, not just software updates like autopilot. What this is about is the Tesla Model S, the 70 kilowatt hour. I couldn't remember what the 70 stood for.
Yes.
Anyway, for the 70, you can pay $3,250 to unlock it's another 5 kilowatt hours. So you can pay $3,250 for someone to flip an electronic switch. And that, I don't know about that, man. That just seems a little weird to me. On the one side, they are indeed making the car better, so shouldn't you pay for that? But on the other side, they make it better in so many other ways, and you don't have to pay for that. So why is this something that costs money?
The joke I made on Twitter about this was it's like in-app purchase where they ship you the app that has the code for the features that are currently locked. And by doing an in-app purchase, all they do is flip a bit that enables that feature. In other words, you just like when you get the car comes with this extra battery, but it's not enabled. Well, you get this app, the app comes with this extra functionality, but it's not enabled. And that was mostly me being snarky because, of course, the difference is that it doesn't cost money to manufacture the additional functionality. Like copying bits is essentially free, whereas someone paid to manufacture and assemble the parts of your car that they're giving to you in a disabled state. So you actually are receiving, like, that's part of the package. It's a physical good. It costs every time they do that. Whatever it is, they put that extra bit of battery in. That's a real physical item. It's not just a simple copying of bits. Now, I don't know if this makes this good from a business standpoint in terms of do you feel better or worse about Tesla as a company in light of this. Maybe you feel better because like your car magically got better, but maybe you feel worse in that you understand you paid to manufacture, assemble this stuff, and then you give it to me, but you intentionally turn it off. It's like you're making my car worse on purpose and then ransoming it that last little bit. Unless I'm totally misunderstanding what they're actually doing with this bit flipping. But if it is actually a physical thing that they are paying to create and then giving to you in a shut-off state to try to ransom more money from you later, it doesn't give me a particularly good feeling about the company or the car.
It's definitely a weird thing. And yeah, I agree that it's probably not a way to win customer satisfaction. People will feel ripped off by that. Like people who own the 70D and then learn that, oh, actually you have the 75 kilowatt capacity physically, but we only shipped it to 70, and then if you want, you can pay $3,000 to unlock it. I can totally see why the people who own those 70Ds are like, that's kind of BS-y. Like that's a little bit BS-y. But Tesla, it's a weird company at a weird stage in its life doing weird things. And most of those things are, I think, overall for the better. With the Model S, keep in mind that the Model S is sold with a pretty healthy profit margin, from what I understand. And the main reason is to basically fund the company's further development to do things like the Model 3. Because if you look at what's included in the Model S, and the starting price of whatever it is, like $70,000, whatever the starting price of the Model S is, and then you look at the Model 3 with the starting price of $35,000, and we already know some of the things that will be included and won't be included in that. And it seems kind of crazy if you try to estimate, well, roughly how big of a battery is there in the Model 3? Roughly how big of a battery is there, in the Model S? How can they possibly cut the cost of the car in half and sell the Model 3 with so much of what's also in the Model S? And the answer is that their costs aren't being cut in half. Just the Model S has a nice fat profit margin, and the Model 3 won't. So what you're paying for with the Model S today is not just like cost of the components plus 20%. You're paying a premium for it because it is a brand new product. You're paying kind of like the early adopter premium on it. It has high profits now. In the long run, it will have lower profit margins in all likelihood because competition will come in and push some of these prices down. And as things mature, then the cost will also go down. But the role of the Model S is basically to generate lots of profit for Tesla to make the Model 3. So from that perspective, I can see why they do things like this, because that additional battery that you're hauling around, the additional 5 kilowatt hour battery, did not cost Tesla $3,000 to put in there.
Or even if it did, you already paid for it. Like they sold you a car with that battery in it for the price that you paid. You know what I mean? Like that was
right.
Like someone in the chat room is saying it's the type of thing where they stopped manufacturing the 70 kilowatt, but you bought a 70 kilowatt. So it's like, well, we don't have any more 70 kilowatts, but we'll give you a 75, but flip the switch so that when you get it, it looks like the 70 that you ordered. Like that was the arrangement. You order the 70, comes with 70 kilowatts. We give you a car that comes with 70 kilowatts. Everyone should be happy. But again, from a feel good about the company perspective, they should do what Apple does in those cases where, like, if you have a really old Mac and something goes wrong with it and you're still within warranty or whatever, or Apple just feels bad, they're like, well, we can't we can't fix this for you. We can't replace the part because we don't make that part anymore. And we can't give you a new, laptop of this kind because we don't even make that laptop. But here you go. Here's the current model of that laptop. That happens all the time at Apple. And every time it happens, it's like a miracle to the people who get it. Like, what do you mean? You're giving me, not only are you giving me a new laptop, you're giving me a new, better laptop because you don't make my old crappy one anymore, and you're not charging me any money for it because it's just like this laptop is a total write-off. It's had too many hardware failures. We can't get a part. That makes people love Apple. So if Tesla, someone in the chat room said it would make the people feel bad who bought a 70D and just got a 70D. If you bought a 70D after they stopped manufacturing them and they gave you a 75, they're like, yeah, I know you ordered a 70, but here's a 75. You would love Tesla. You'd be like, this is awesome. And would 70D people be mad? No, because they've had their car for a year or whatever. Like, it's not...
Well, they'd be mad, but it wouldn't be for legitimate reasons.
But do other Mac users get mad like, hey, that's no fair. I had to pay for that computer new. You bought an old crappy computer and it broke and you got the new one for free? Anyone who begrudges people their good fortune involving, the time they chose to purchase or their time their thing broke, that's just ridiculous. So anyway, I don't think this is, as you noted, Margo, like this is a car that, it costs a lot of money, has a big margin. The people who are buying it are probably not caring that much about $3,000 here or there because this is a very expensive car. So in the grand scheme of things, maybe it doesn't hurt them, but they've sort of, they've missed an opportunity to become even more beloved. Using, the Apple style things of just like, surprise and delight or whatever, not just in your application, but also in your policies. It's one of the reasons people like the Genius Bar. I know people have bad experiences with it as well, but to go there, have a person who, will take care of your needs. And if there's any sort of issue, to have the people go, that's like kind of like a luxury goods experience where if you really, really massively overpay for something, the one good thing is like if you have any problem with it, like, oh, return it anytime or we'll give a new one or we'll clean it up for you for free or whatever. Even though you don't massively overpay for Apple stuff, maybe just a little bit overpay, when you go in with your broken computer and they can't replace it because it's too old and they give you a brand new model, that's just awesome. That's like you are loyal for at least another 3 years before you get mad at them again.
Yeah. And also, keep in mind also, like, even though all the hype right now is about the Model 3, for the next, 2 years, possibly more, the Model S is still the only Tesla you can buy, or the X, I guess, but nobody wants that one. Sorry, X people. So, the entry price, whatever they can make the cheapest Model S, that is the entry price for Tesla for the next X years. 2, 3, whatever it ends up being before anybody can just go order a Model 3 and have it delivered, in 6 weeks or whatever. So the lower they can make that price, the more people they can get into being Tesla customers at all. They also, though, want to preserve those profit margins on the higher spec models because that's funding the rest of the company. So it's important for them to somehow get the price down enough so they can get a few more people in, basically without cannibalizing their higher end sales. So they have to do tricks like this, where it's like, well, if we sold it just as a 75 before, and so it was like 75 for that one or 85 for the big one up, that was too small of a difference. We would lose too many sales. Maybe they figured, so they made that one a 70, even though it technically had 75 in there, or something like that, And then when they raised the other one from 85 to 90, then they raised the other one from 70 to 75 because now you're just keeping the same difference. There's all sorts of reasons why they could have done this that make total sense, and that even though they might annoy some of the customers who don't think things should work that way, it might be better than the alternative for the company as a whole.
This isn't unprecedented either. Like, when I first heard about this story a few days back, my first thought was, oh, that's a little gross. But as I was thinking about it while you guys were talking, I paid almost $1,000 for a Cobb access port, which is a thing. I refer to it as a chip colloquially, but really it's just a software reprogrammer that you plug into the OBD2 port, and it will reflash the computer and give you a little bit more power, and it makes the car a little bit faster. And then I was thinking to myself, well, but that's a little bit different because that's third party. And so, yeah, it makes sense that a third party is going to want to sell you something to make your car better. But then I got thinking about it a little more, and it occurred to me BMW sells what they call the Performance Power Kit, which, to my understanding, does have a little bit of hardware involved, but the majority of the changes are simply a reflash, just like my Cobb does. So this is a first-party thing. And again, it's not entirely apples to apples because there is a little bit of hardware, but it's a first-party thing that I'm looking on BMW's website right now, and it's $2,107. So this is not that different in my eyes than what BMW is already doing, and presumably other manufacturers as well.
I wonder, can you pirate a battery?
Yeah, I don't know.
You could pirate the bid flipping, but no. But in the BMW case, maybe part of the money that you're paying is to offset increased warranty repairs for your engine that is operating slightly outside the intended, boundaries of whatever, depending on what it's changing about the engine. It could be impacting reliability or other issues like that. So the price is basically everyone pays this price as a blanket insurance policy for the slightly increased odds that you're going to have your valve train blow up or whatever.
It could be, but I mean, I would hope and assume that these engines are built in such a way that their tolerances give them enough leeway that a first-party solution would not bump up against any of that. Now, my solution might.
But there's a reason they sell them where they sell. They try what the car manufacturers are trying to do, or sell their engines tuned in a way that balances performance with reliability, and
economy
and emissions.
Right. So there's a whole bunch of things in the mix there, and they're going for something that makes the worst thing you want to happen is you put these cars out there with a particular balance of things, and it turns out that all of them end up coming back in like 6 years with something really expensive wrong with the engine. Like, you don't want that to happen. But if people say, well, I know you could squeeze some more horsepower out of this thing if only you increase the boost on the turbos, or change the timing, or whatever you want to do on the thing, and it might have a slight detrimental impact on reliability, but if people are willing to give us some money, we'll do that, and then I guess like a big pool to pay for the one guy out of every 100 whose engine dies a premature death due to this tuning thing. But everyone has the same engine. It's not as if there's part of your engine that you're not being allowed to use. It's more like, I think of it as like buying AppleCare Plus or whatever.
Fair enough.
I was gonna say it's like 80-minute CDRs versus 74-minute standard, but as you kept going, it ended up being nothing like that.
Goodness. All right, Adam Bushman writes in to say, getting to love something like ad bumpers by being exposed to it frequently, that's called is that MERE or MERE exposure effect? I'm surely mispronouncing that, but MERE exposure effect.
Casey, you are the chief pronouncer on the show.
Oh, great.
Chief summarizer and chief pronouncer.
I thought it was like merely by being exposed, and it's like the worst name effect ever, the mere exposure effect. Merely by being exposed, you come to like it. Anyway, we'll link the Wikipedia article, which obviously none of us actually read, but you can read it.
Indeed.
You all can do our homework for us.
That's how this show works. It's accidental.
Well, that's one of the jobs of Wikipedia is every phenomenon that you think has a name probably does. That's probably a phenomenon, the idea that you come up with an idea and it turns out there's a name for it already. What is the name of that phenomenon?
I bet nobody knows except Merlin. I guarantee you he knows.
He doesn't know. He just looks it up on Wikipedia like everyone else. This is the beginning of the ad.
Our second sponsor tonight is FreshBooks. FreshBooks created cloud accounting software and invoicing software so ridiculously simple to use that over 5 million small business owners are now officially feeling the FreshBooks effect, including many of our friends, by the way. This means a lot more smiling and way less stressing when it comes to dealing with administration, paperwork, invoicing, and getting paid. Now, invoicing is where FreshBooks started, and it is so good. You can use FreshBooks to create and send invoices. This takes a grand total of literally about 30 seconds. There's no formulas, no formatting, no like error-prone manual calculations or anything, just perfectly crafted invoices every time. And your clients can pay you online. They support all sorts of payment methods and gateways, and this means that it's easier for your clients to pay, which means you get paid faster. They actually have numbers on this. You get paid an average of a few days faster by doing online payments. Of course, if your clients forget, whether that's in quotes or not, to pay your invoice, you don't have to like awkwardly email them and be like, hey, did you see my invoice? Because FreshBooks not only logs activity of when things are viewed, so you can see if they open it up and when, but also you can configure FreshBooks to automatically send automated reminders about late payment or due dates coming up, and so that way you can avoid having those awkward conversations yourself with your clients. You can also, if you invoice people in person, if you do some kind of service in person, they also recently launched a mobile card reader that will help you take credit cards in person right there with FreshBooks, right for your invoices for in-person work. And of course, there's all sorts of other tools built in, like you can track your expenses. So you're dealing with consulting clients, you need to invoice them for things or whatever the case, any kind of expenses you have to track, even expenses that aren't related to FreshBooks itself. Like you can connect your bank account and have it track all your expenses and generate your tax form stuff at the end of the year. It's amazing what FreshBooks can do. Of course, in addition to receipts and everything, you can use their mobile app to take pictures of receipts on the go for your expense tracking. There are so many features here, it doesn't all fit in one ad, so I got to go over things differently in each ad. But tell you what, there's a lot here, and there's an API for developers if you want to integrate this into your own stuff or customize it. There's so much at FreshBooks. Check it out today. You can try it for free for 30 days. Go to freshbooks.com/ATP. Please enter Accidental Tech Podcast in the How Did You Hear About Us section, just in case you forget to use that code. Please remember to put our name in the How Did You Hear About Us section. So, once again, free trial 30 days. Go to freshbooks.com/ATP. Thanks a lot.
And this is the end of the ad.
So, the New York Times on the 7th, which was this past Saturday as we record, released an article, Podcast Surge, but producers fear Apple isn't listening. And this article, it had some problems. The quick summary from your summarizer-in-chief is that Apple supposedly had a handful of big-name podcasters into their campus to talk to Apple about what they want from Apple to make their jobs easier. And the way this New York Times article was written was basically we want all the data about all the things. And Apple may or may not be giving that to us, and that's mildly alarming. This has created quite obviously quite a hubbub in our little circle because most of the things that the New York Times article is talking about big data, about getting access to who listened to what when, and when I say who, I mean, how old is this person, what gender are they, where do they live, how much do they make, what do they like, what do they not like, etc. And when they listen, did they listen to the whole thing? Did they only listen to part of it? Did they listen to the beginning and skip the middle? Did they skip the ads? Did they not skip the ads? Do they like the ads? Do they not like the ads? Tell us everything. Well, for those of us who care about our listeners, we don't want that. We don't need that. We don't want that. And we hope we never get in the position that we do need that. And so this article had a lot of problems. And Marco, you wrote a really nice post about it. I don't really know what to say that hasn't already been said in either Marco's post or Federico's, but I'm sure there's something to be said. So Marco, take it away.
I mean, the good thing is all the other stuff that had to be said, Jason and Mike said on Upgrade this week. So I suggest you go listen to that instead. But if you want to stick around here as well or listen to us as well, there's a few parts here. I mean, so you mentioned the data gathering part that the leading podcasters allegedly wanted. By the way, this whole article is stating a bunch of things as fact. Like, this is definitely how Apple does things now. This meeting definitely happened. It definitely happened like this with these people in it. And so far, I have not heard any corroboration to support some of these facts, like the specifics about the meeting. Additionally, I know firsthand that many of the things in the article stated as fact or implied as fact are wrong or misleading with how the system works, or Apple's role in it, or technical details of how it works. So take this article with a giant pile of salt. Honestly, I would say don't even bother reading it. If you did read it, it reads more like something that maybe somebody on Forbes would have written to be like an anti-Apple like clickbait piece, because it attributes a lot of intent and like malice to Apple for like what they've been holding back on all these years and stuff like that. That is just misleading at best, and in some cases just outright wrong. It needs to be taken with a lot of salt. So that being said, I think you can look at the medium here, the podcasting medium, the way it has worked so far, which basically works like RSS readers that happen to play audio files. That's basically it. Like, it's sites publish RSS feeds with MP3s or AACs, and the vast majority are MP3s, so I'm just going to say that from now on. And clients are basically RSS readers, and they fetch those RSS feeds for everything you subscribe to. And when a new episode is present, they download the MP3 file that's embedded, the link of which is embedded in the feed. Then they show it to you as an episode. When it's playing, it's simply playing an MP3. It is not like loading pages on the site of the podcast provider or anything like that. It is not executing JavaScript on their behalf. It is not sending them tracking information. They do get the hit on their server for when you fetch that MP3. So podcasters already have a certain amount of data about their listeners. And so the idea that Apple needs to step in and provide data so that people can have any idea what size their audience is, it's a little exaggerated because we already know how big our audience is. It's a little bit approximated, but I think history shows with a lot of this, data science in massive quotes. My fingers are just constantly moving during this whole thing. Just constant air quotes, just up and down. All the web data stuff is also imprecise. So, and is also very easily faked and defrauded all the time and everything. So all the problems that apply to what we have now also apply to proper, my fingers are still moving, big data kind of analytics and creepy tracking stuff. Anyway, so we already know how big the audience is to a rough degree, where they are to a rough degree, and how many of them download each show. We don't need that level of data integration where you go much beyond this yet. And we might in the future in order to get high ad rates. But right now we don't. The reason the web had to, my fingers are still moving, had to do all this creepy data stuff is because web ad rates just plummeted. I mean, they were never great to begin with. And over the years since the web has been a thing, I think they've just basically always gone down. Because general web display ads, like ads you'd see on the side of a news site or increasingly on top of the news site you're trying to read, floating in, flying around the news site, in the background of the news site, in every sidebar, above and below the content, posing as, oh, these top news stories, these weird new tricks the new scientists wanted you to learn about Britney Spears. The reason it keeps getting so bad on the web is that nobody looks at web ads. It's not that people see them and ignore them. People don't even see them. Even if you don't have an ad blocker installed, you visually don't see them. You don't perceive them. You skip over them. The whole banner blindness thing is real. There's very little that web publishers can really do to make a lot of money on those things. And so they've had to do all this crazy tracking stuff just to try to make it slightly more targeted, to raise the rates slightly more. And then, of course, there's the rise of all these programmatic ad exchanges, which makes everything even worse and even more horrible and even more creepily tracked. But that's a long aside that we don't need to get any more into. Summary version, basically, the web sucks for ads. It is a terrible place to advertise. It is a terrible place to publish advertisements, to try to make money from them. Additionally, as I mentioned before, all the massive fraud that goes on, it's such a mess. It's just bad for everybody because the medium just doesn't work that well for display. It just doesn't work very well. Simple as that. And as everything gets more and more cutthroat and advanced technically and algorithmically generated and everything, it's just getting worse and worse and worse. And there's kind of no end in sight there. The web as a place to make money through advertising is really a pretty bad place to be. So podcasts, on the other hand, because these are just MP3 files, it's just an audio stream. There's basically nothing you can really do to advertise in an audio stream except just insert an ad that somebody is speaking into the stream. And because of lots of reasons, there's not a lot of tracking you can do to say, did people hear that ad? With a few exceptions, but for the most part, you can't really track, did people hear this? Did people listen this far in the show? You pretty much can't do it because, what if somebody's playing it on their iPod that doesn't even have an internet connection? You don't know that. They're still playing the file they downloaded from you, and there's no way for that to be reported to you. What if they're playing it in, some, web embed or Twitter embed where, they're just, they can see the MP3 file, but they're not, loading a whole app. They're not loading your whole web page or something. They're still listening. And by the raw metric of download counts, they will be counted. But that's all you can really get.
What if the soothing sound of our voice put them to sleep, and as they fall asleep, 5 ads play?
Exactly. Yeah. Like, should we get paid for those? Like, so there's no way to tell whether somebody has listened to a certain point, basically, unless you control the app. And we'll get to that. So anyway, this to me is like this beautiful system because the web, I love the web. And it makes me so sad to see what the web has become over the last 5 years or so, as everything has just gotten so much more cutthroat and driven by automated ad tech and algorithmic content generation. And it's just, as I said, it's just a mess. And as a fan of both the web as a medium and also the openness of blogging and RSS feeds and everything, which I still use, by the way, I still use an RSS reader. It's not dead. That world is losing to Facebook and Twitter and Apple and these kind of closed ecosystems. That makes me very sad. And podcasting is still run that way. The question, basically, the debate here is whether podcasting can still be run that way for a longer time, or whether this, the article kept saying like it has outgrown its roots. Has it? Like, does podcasting really need to add all this crap to let people's business grow? Because podcasting is working just fine the way it is. So if you talk about like how much you make per listener or per user, ad people call this the CPM, the cost per 1,000 impressions, however you measure that. Thanks, France, by the way, for the M. So the web, I think you're lucky to get. I mean, what's a good web CPM today? Like a few dollars, maybe at most. I mean, and with podcasting, the numbers are lower. The listener numbers are lower. Like, a good website can get millions of hits a month. The top podcasts, things like This American Life, like really big podcasts, might get like 1 million downloads a month or something in that ballpark. I don't know. I don't have recent numbers on that, but that's what I heard like a year or two ago or something like that. So, 1 million downloads a month for a podcast would put you in like the top handful of podcasts that exist in the world. Whereas 1 million hits to a web page is kind of like lower to mid-level traffic these days. Like you can get way more than that if you're a big site. But the podcast can command something like a $20 to $60 CPM instead of what the web is getting, like, $1 or $2. Because podcast advertising is just so much more effective. It's not even close. It is way more effective. And part of that's because you have, people like us, like the hosts reading the ads, and that makes you pay attention more. A big part of it is you're actually hearing them, as opposed to the web where you just do not even see the ads at all. And not because of ad blockers, because you actually just ignore them. Podcast ads are so much more effective just because of the medium, because of how it's heard, where it's heard, who is saying it, what they're saying, the relationship people have, the dedication they have, where and how they're listening, as opposed to like on the web, you're kind of just like skimming constantly and you kind of get through as fast as you can. A podcast, you're probably listening to while doing something else, whether it's working, driving, whatever the case. You're less physically engaged in the activity, so you're less likely, I think, to skip the ad. It's just such a different environment that it just happens to work way better for ads. So for some reason, this handful of big podcasters allegedly met with some people at Apple, allegedly trying to get them to say, well, we want to basically do like web levels of data tracking, and we want Apple to put that in their app because that's the only way we can really have it done, is to put these things in apps. The implication there is because they want their business models to be more like the web, and that just seems insane to me because the web is in such shambles, and we have it great over here in podcast land. They don't know how lucky they are. The web does these data things because it has to for most sites to get anything at all, not because that is the inevitable way forward to, quote, grow your business. Podcasting is not new. It is not even, I wouldn't even say it's booming. I think it's growing steadily the same way it has for 10 years. And if you look at like podcast growth, it's not a hockey stick curve. It's basically a line. And everyone who thinks it's new, it's just like, it's like the tip of the iceberg thing, like where it finally poked out of the ocean, where it's like they think, oh my God, this is here all of a sudden. And in reality, like, no, it's been growing the entire time under the ocean. You just didn't see it. there's basically the debate over whether podcasting needs to change in order to enable, quote, growth or to mature or something. And this what angered me so much about this article, in addition to all the things that it got like factually wrong or misleading, it basically stated as given, as fact, that podcasting was outgrowing its roots and needed to change the way it operates to be more like the web. I very strongly disagree with that. I'm not saying that podcasting should never change, but I am saying I don't think it needs to change in this way right now and possibly ever, because this is a different medium. It works very differently. And the idea that a few people, most of whom come from the web and ad tech worlds, think that podcasts should work more like the web, first of all, I find that baffling because, as I said, the web sucks. And second of all, I think that is a bad argument. It doesn't follow. Like that, you can't make that argument without support that's showing that somehow podcasting is really suffering without this and is declining and needs this to survive. And I'm seeing no evidence of that at all. In fact, I'm seeing the opposite. I'm seeing podcasting is growing and is doing very well. Going to the Apple side, like what could Apple do? Apple is a directory. They're the biggest directory, and they have this big editorial section where they can promote shows, which they do. And as far as I know, they're the only people who invest a lot of human effort to actually make editorial podcast picks in lots of different categories every week, and around the world, I think. So like they're already doing a lot on the editorial side. I don't know what else they could do on the editorial side. I think like they're already doing way more than anybody could be expected to do, given that they're making so little money off of podcasting. I think they're doing a very good job. Apple, I think editorially, I think they're set. We should be thankful they're doing as much as they do. And then you have the Apple Player. And this is kind of where... So the Apple Podcast Player is the most popular podcast playing app, the one built into iOS. I don't know how well iTunes does anymore on the desktop. I think it's pretty small probably. But the one on iOS that comes with iOS, called Podcasts from Apple with the purple icon, that is the most popular podcast player in the world. It has something like 60% or 60 or 70% of podcast downloads, according to most people. And so they're basically pushing Apple to say, the stats we get now are not enough. We want you to do two things for us. We want you to, A, give us as much data as you can about the people. So tell us, like, how many of these downloads into your app actually get listened to? Where do they listen? Where do they stop playing each episode? Like, what timestamp down to the second, so we can optimize our content and tweak our storytelling abilities. And then their advertisers can ask how many people actually heard our entire ad, so they can then, I guess, not pay us. Like, again, a lot of these things don't make sense once you think them through. But I don't know why podcasters would be asking for some of these things. But anyway, so that's part one, is that they want Apple to add all this creepy data tracking to their Player app and then to report it to the podcasters in some way. And once again, I think Jason Snell and Mike Hurley on Upgrade this past week did a very, very good job of covering exactly like what the kind of implications of this would be and how like just the scale of the operation this would entail to even do this if they wanted to, and how useful the data would actually be, considering that it's not it isn't all listeners. It's, depending on the show, somewhere between like probably 20 and 70% of the listeners. So and it might not be a representative sample. So it's the quality of the data they would get would itself be in question, even if they got it. And then the process of them getting it and the systems involved, the implementation of that would be a huge mess, not to mention all the ethical and quality issues it would then create, the incentives it would create with podcast creation, with these pro podcasters to like structure their shows differently so that they would boost these numbers in these little tiny ways that would kind of sacrifice quality or overall flow, but it would give us 5% more this month, because you can say now that would never happen, but look at the web. It happens. It always happens. So let's not kid ourselves. Like, that would definitely happen. So you have this massive problematic request of the more data. Then you also have the request from the podcasters that Apple enable other business models. And what they basically mean is enable a way for people to pay for our shows. There's already ways to pay for podcasts. Lots of podcasts do. I know this because Overcast doesn't support their feeds, and I hear from all their fans. every day. There's already ways to do things like paid feeds, members-only feeds, whether it's password protected or it's hidden URLs, which I do support those. Thanks, Jason. I do support those. Please subscribe to 6 Colors. The password stuff I don't support, and a lot of them, like there'll be like a members-only area or paid podcasts that aren't even distributed as podcast files. They're in a feed. You like sign up with their website, and then you can download the raw audio files. There are lots of ways to do this. The biggest way to do this, though, Apple made in 2008. It's called the App Store. This is what most people do. If they want to have a paid podcast, they release their own app to play their podcast, which gives them all of the capabilities that the podcasters are asking Apple for, allegedly. That already exists. It's existed for 8 years. It's called the App Store. You can make your app. You can charge whatever you want for the app. You can have in-app purchase in the app. You can control the entire player experience and do all the creepy data tracking you want. That's already there. Many podcasts have their own apps. This is not a new thing, and it works okay. I don't know anybody who makes a ton of their listenership or money that way, but they make some. It's fine. So you know what? If that's the kind of system you want, it already exists. And take it from a developer. I guarantee you that whatever Apple would do with the podcast app store, or with the podcast store that everyone's apparently asking for, would be worse. That would be a worse system than just making your own app. You don't want that. Trust me. Like, either way, Apple's taking 30%. Let's be honest here. I mean, we know that. They're taking at least 30% either way. At least in the App Store, it's only 30%. If they make their own podcast store, that gives them the opportunity to set a new rate. It might be higher now that Apple's a services company. So, believe me, you don't want that.
But don't you understand why they don't want to make their own app? Like, isn't it obvious, like, the fragmentation problem of that? If everyone has their own app, like the advancement of the App Store is like the one place you go to get all the software, instead of having to go to individual developers' websites that have discoverability problems and making people aware and getting the fatigue. It's kind of like we have on Apple TV now, like the fatigue of like, if I want to list this podcast, I got to do this app, and I want to do that podcast, I got to do that app. Like, or kind of like when books were individual apps back when Apple was allowing that, where you get one book as an individual app. It's just a lot of fragmentation, and if everybody did that, it's really hard to get attention from anybody. And like the sort of level playing field that you were talking about before is an advantage of saying, look, Apple, if you just implement this stuff as sort of the baseline within the only podcast player app that matters, the built-in Apple one, as far as these people are concerned, allegedly in this article here, then we wouldn't have to fight for the attention to get our app downloaded. And it really is a barrier to people. Like, people don't want to have to download a new app for it's like having to download a new app for every movie you want to see. It's like, you'd rather just go to a store and be able to rent or buy the movie, and you don't have to go to 17 different stores. And there are still multiple stores, but if it was one per podcast, that's bad. So I kind of, what I'm trying to do reading this article is put myself into perhaps not the headspace of the theoretical people who talk to Apple, but the headspace of the author of this article, because a lot of things in this article are not quotes, are not like sentiments attributed to people who supposedly met with Apple, but rather are just stated in what looks like the author's voice, presumably informed by by accounts of the meeting. And I'm trying to figure out, like, why is it that the author or the people that the author spoke to believe these things about podcasting? Like, what is, I don't know, what are we missing? Because I think you've outlined it pretty well. Like, from our perspective, it doesn't make any sense, but our perspective isn't the only perspective. And I think the best thing I've come up with is that if you want to reach a bigger audience, like, podcasts are the size that they are. Serial is way bigger than lots of podcasts. This American Life is way bigger, but that kind of barely counts because it built its audience on the radio and not as a podcast, right? If you want to go really big with that, big audience means, I suppose, high production values. It costs more to make shows that good to, I don't even know if that's true, but like, I'm trying to get in their head and their thinking. Like,
I think it's loosely correlated. High production values can result in better shows. They sometimes do result in better shows, but they don't always, and they aren't always required.
Right. But anyway, if you were going for a much bigger audience, part of that would also be going for bigger advertisers, advertisers who are used to, who would not bother advertising on the numbers that most podcasts put up. And if you want big advertisers, big advertisers, having been conditioned by all the crap on the web that you just talked about, want this information that is not available from podcasts. So it's kind of like, we want to go really big. We want to go mass market. And by the way, when you go mass market, your CPMs go down because mass market, like, we're going to make a show for everybody. Everybody is not as valuable as people who are super duper into model trains. Because if you have a podcast, you know, for people who are super duper into model train manufacturers will pay a lot for that, right? Whereas if you're going to have our podcast is listened to by everyone's not a great demo. Or like our podcast is listened to by, you know, like, you really, the reason podcasts get such high CPMs, and the reason I think a lot of tech podcasts get high CPMs, is it's a narrow self-selecting audience based on the topic. And those audiences can be much more valuable than the mass audiences. So anyway, if you want to make podcasts way bigger and sell to a mass audience and your CPM goes down, you really need the tools that will let you get Coca-Cola to put an advertisement on your thing, or, you know, talk to Procter and Gamble or whatever. Like, these really big things that, you know, buy Super Bowl ads and you have huge ad budgets. And I think that's kind of the chicken egg, the thing they're trying to go. It's like podcasts it looks like almost like a wasted medium from the perspective of these people who want to go for a big audience. Like, I bet many more people would go for or think about radio. Like, you'd have, you know, every kind of mass advertiser would be on radio because, like, oh, this reaches everybody. But the everybody model is so different than the current podcasting model. I think what they want to happen is, please make a world where Coca-Cola will advertise. And here are the ingredients we see that will hook up all the pieces in this chain so that we will have a podcast that plays to 50 million people, and that really big companies pay for ads at a tremendous rate and a tremendously low CPM, but we'll make it up in volume. And now we are a big player, and we will just squish all the other shows, and we'll make Serial look like a little silly NPR fluke. I don't even know if Serial was NPR. Sorry, PRI, if that's you or whoever the hell it is. And that's so outside our understanding of podcasts and our little tech circle and our nerdy podcasts and stuff like that. I don't necessarily think that can't and shouldn't exist. But like, as a goal, I kind of see it as, well, it's something to that. Like, imagine if you have the podcast that everybody listens to. Serial, it seems like it was. Most people, you know, like, it's just big compared to other podcasts. It's not as if someone came out with the equivalent of, you know, Star Wars 1977, like the movie that everybody in a generation saw. There is no podcast equivalent to that yet. And they could be going for it, and I think that's an interesting goal and interesting thing to aspire to. But the things they're asking for, A, are informed by the web, and like you said, like, that's pretty stupid. And B, like, what they're asking Apple to do, I don't understand why. Maybe they haven't been burned enough by this, but asking Apple to, hey, build in these analytics into your app and make, you know, and subscriptions and stuff like that. And of course, there are so many things that only Apple can do because they're platform level things or have to do with the App Store. And there's only one way to get software on your things. It's through the App Store. Again, focusing on iOS, but I'm sure they make the same pitch to Google, although Google's got its own Google Play thing going on over there. But were they successful in lobbying Apple for the things they supposedly want? They will just, you know, in their wildest dreams, what they will have successfully done is created YouTube, which is terrible. Which is, you never want a situation where the only reasonable way to make money with video on the web is through YouTube, and YouTube controls
music.
Yeah, and YouTube controls everything about it, and there's no competition, and they can change the terms at any time. And what the hell are you going to do because it's YouTube? Like, why would you ask for that? Why would you? You are, you know, again, to Apple's credit or whatever, or to Apple's apathy or whatever, like, they're probably not going to do any of this stuff. But if they did, it would be terrible for everyone involved, both the big guys, because they would just be putting themselves under the thumb of Apple, and for the small people who are like, no, we don't want that. We like to be free and open or whatever. Like, so it's a terrible doomsday scenario if they got what they wanted, because it would just make it dysfunction all the ways you talked about for the web and the data and ever decreasing CPMs and the perverse incentives and the fraud and everything like that. And you would be shoveling all of the power in the market to this one gatekeeper just because you didn't want to write your own app, and because you couldn't abide to have a simple open system with RSS feeds because it didn't give you the analytics you want. Like, it's such a terrible thing to want. Like, again, I kind of see where they're coming from, and like, we want the big breakout hit and we need this data and we need these tools, but I feel like you should work that out. It's so hard for me to talk about this, Steve, accepting the premise that these things happen in the article, whether they said they did, but
right, because they
let's
didn't
pretend that it did. You should be talking to Coca-Cola about how they should be okay with funding this podcast full of celebrities that you think millions and millions of people are going to listen to without the obsessive data that they think they should technically be able to get. It's like Coca-Cola, picture back to the olden days when people filled out little paper forms after they watched television shows, and you bought advertisement based on that. And now we're going to tell you a precise number of downloads, and you won't do it because it's just not enough data, and you need to know the exact demos, and again, where they live, and what their income is, and what things they last clicked on, and what they last bought on Amazon, and what cookie has been tracking them through their Facebook clicks for the last... Oh, it's just... It's a somewhat admirable goal to try to make like a podcast breakout hit, but I think the supposed demands of these people in this article are totally the wrong way to go about it. And one tiny passage that I highlighted here, just to finish up, like, makes me just question everything about this. This is, again, not a quote and not attributed to anything, but it's the article says, promotion within iTunes, which is one of the only reliable ways to build an audience, particularly for a new show, is decided by a small team, blah, 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 blah. Promotion within iTunes is not only not one of the only reliable ways to build an audience, but probably one of the worst ways to build an audience. Because, if you could guarantee that you would be promoted as the number one podcast on iTunes for an entire year, would that build an audience? Versus, say, if you made a podcast that promised to slowly lay out the plot for Star Wars Episode 8, the Episode 8, entirely unpromoted in iTunes podcast, would crush your podcast. It's the only reliable way to build you build an audience by making things that people like, and leveraging an existing audience is probably the best way to build an audience, but the only reliable way, I don't know, I can't think of a single person who found their favorite podcast because it was promoted on iTunes. And I'm sure they're out there, and I'm sure they'll send us things, but it's just such a warped view of the world of podcast listening. That's not how people discovered Serial. People did not discover Serial because it was promoted on iTunes. It was promoted on iTunes because people discovered Serial. There is a place for editorial or whatever, but if you got it in your head that iTunes is already this kingmaker gatekeeper, I don't know, you are abdicating all of your responsibility to build your own audience by having a good show and doing your own marketing and stuff like that. Again, editorial is important, and they do promote shows, and it's important to for shows to come out of obscurity, that Apple can put them in new and noteworthy and whatever weird systems they're having, and it's a fun little thing. But really, to frame it as the only reliable way to build an audience, particularly for a new show, that just does not match with my understanding of the podcast world at all, especially when it comes to mass market shows, because the mass market is not trolling the iTunes podcast directory. They don't even know what podcasts are, right? They only know because they heard about Serial, and then they figured out what podcasts are.
That's the problem. By treating Apple as the whole world, as you very well said, you're not only trying to make them the only platform that matters at all and trying to increase their share, but you're also kind of investing in a sinking ship, because that 60% market share that they most likely have among listening, that goes down every year. Believe me, I've been watching. That's decreasing over time as more podcast players sprout up on iOS, and as more people finally get around to listening on Android, because Android so far has been very underrepresented in podcast stats, according to most big hosts. I know Libsyn used to announce numbers every so often. It used to be something like 8-1 in favor of iOS for every show that they host, which is a lot of shows. Now Android's getting higher. You have people like Google Play and Spotify entering the podcast market in possibly big ways. We'll see how those end up going, and I don't like them, but they exist, so we'll see how that ends up going. But you have the podcast market becoming more and more diverse. Apple's market share is going down, and all of a sudden these people want to give Apple a reason to lock things down and dominate. That's a terrible idea. And also, as you said, the idea of relying on them for all of your audience growth is ridiculous. We know from the App Store, we know everyone who relies only on the App Store for their promotion, we tell them they're doing it wrong. We tell them no, you can't. Even the App Store people will tell you, please don't rely on us. And if you're trying to get featured by the App Store and you have no other marketing, that actually hurts your chances of being featured. They want to feature things that have real marketing plans. And so the idea of trying to like basically make Apple do all your work for you to promote your podcast, as you said, John, is terrible. Also, getting back to the ad thing for a second, which kind of ties into this. Everything that the podcasters are asking Apple to do or asking for is basically comes down to, we are not making enough per listener from our ads. And we would like to add all this tracking so that we can make more money. It's basically like saying the only way for us to grow is to extract more out of the existing listener base. Remember what I said earlier about the relative size of the audience between podcasts and the web? A great podcast might get a few 100,000 downloads an episode. That would put it in like the top probably 5 or 1% of podcasts. On the web, that's nothing. If you want to grow your business as podcasters, the way for growth is to get more people listening to podcasts and then to get more people listening to your podcast. That's obvious. Like, I don't understand how anybody can look at the situation now and say, well, what we need to grow to really grow this, we're just outgrowing this old model here. What we really need is ad tech. What? No, you need more people listening to podcasts. You know how you do that? It's not by making podcasts suck. It's not by getting all creepy on people and putting all this stuff in their face. It's not by putting up a paywall. Sorry. Grow the audience. That's the way for revenue growth. Like, you start doing all this data mining crap when either your ads don't work or when you have saturated the audience and you need to find new ways to extract more out of what you have. Neither of those things are true for podcasting. It's the opposite. Podcasting has tons of room to grow. It is growing. Not, as I said, not hockey stick level, growth, but it is steadily growing over time. There's tons of potential still to grow into, especially as we have further penetration of Bluetooth and cell phones in cars, which is where a lot of listening happens. And we have all these new, cheap home speaker Bluetooth devices for people to listen more at home. And you have people getting more and more into the habit of listening to things on their smartphones. Like, there is tons of room for growth here. And there are so many people who don't listen to podcasts now. That's where you focus. You focus your effort on growing the pool. We're already making great rates on the ads. Rates that, as you said, like when you expand like Coca-Cola, all these things were like, oh, we have to expand it to brand advertising. Okay, so right now we have mostly direct response advertisers. This is things like Squarespace, things like things where like you sign up for a service or you buy a product and you give them some kind of coupon or discount code, or you visit a special URL, and they track how many people bought their thing through each show or each episode's URL, and that kind of gives them an idea of how many people might have heard the ad and how much they are willing to pay for future ads as a result of how much they're making from their past ads. All these articles about how much we have to move into brand advertising, they're all like, well, we just keep hearing the same ads from like Squarespace over and over again. You ever wonder why? They're not dumb. They're buying them because they work really well. And whatever they're spending on the ads, which, as I said, is a really nice amount by CPM, whatever they're spending on the ads, they're making that back. They can see it in direct response conversions and results. The reason why we have so many direct response advertisers and why every podcast, for the most part, does, is because they can directly measure the value, they see it, and they say, we want more because these ads are working ridiculously well. Brand advertising, things like, oh, we're just going to plaster Coke ads all over these billboards for the next 10 years and hope that increases our margin slightly. Brand advertising, by definition, is almost impossible to measure. It basically goes unmeasured. Brand advertising is basically a shot in the dark. People are just hoping that over time, by getting their logo and their name out there and associating happy things with their brand or whatever, people will start recognizing their brand and sales will slowly increase as this recognition builds. The web has developed such incredibly sophisticated and creepy levels of tracking and analytics and behavioral monitoring and surveillance that they can see to a much greater degree what works and what doesn't. Brand ads don't pay that much on the web because they can see it's not working. When you're saying you want brand ads, what you're really saying is, we're going to sell brand ads because our ads don't work. So we're going to sell these to you, Coke, because we know you won't really be able to measure.
Well, but Coke also isn't interested in the small numbers, and Squarespace, maybe not Squarespace, but some other advertisers that are basically paying to acquire new customers for some kind of subscription plan may not be able to pay, like Coke will pay more because brand advertising is by definition we want the big numbers, huge shotgun approach. That's the only type of advertising to which the sort of general purpose broad demographic is actually desirable, because that's what we're going for. We want everybody to know what Coca-Cola is. We don't care who you are, what you do, what you're interested in. You need to know about Coca-Cola, and it's awesome. They want the big numbers. Anything that is acquiring customers, even something like, Fracture or whatever, I don't think that they're not gonna keep the same CPM and pay for a show that gives 100 million people. It would bankrupt the company, right? And they're not interested. They're not interested in spraying they'd be overpaying, because only a small fraction of those people are actually interested in signing up. It would be much better to go on a podcast where a much higher percentage of the people who listen are into digital photography and making prints of it or whatever, So I feel like they want to get those big advertisers because, the number on the check is going to be really big. And the only people who are going to write that check are the people who are doing brand advertising. And that's the way you get, again, if you want to get a podcast that has 200 million downloads for every episode, I think brand advertising is your only path to that. And so they're trying to connect the dots to make that happen. And by the way, I agree that the way you would get a big podcast like that is you have to get more people listening to podcasts. But the best way to do that is to keep podcasts like the web. The reason everybody can and did eventually come to use the web is because it wasn't controlled by Microsoft or Yahoo or whoever else. It was a thing that anyone can implement the web browser and anyone can make a website, and no one company owns and controls it. That's what let it spread everywhere. If you try to make Apple the king of podcasts or Android the king of podcasts or whatever, you're narrowing the number of people who can listen to podcasts, especially if you pick somebody who has a platform. Because again, say you took iOS or Android and one of them became the only thing in podcasting that mattered, you're cutting off half of the market right there. You want everybody to be able to listen to podcasts really easily on no matter what device they have. Whatever weird thing they buy in their house or have on their person or in their car or wherever, you want everybody to be able to listen to podcasts just like everybody can go to your website. The reason websites have huge amount of traffic is because everybody can go to websites. That you don't have to have a special kind of computer or a special operating system or a special application or whatever. Essentially, every platform has some way to browse the web, and we're at that point with podcasts now. It's just RSS. Anybody can make a player for it for any type of thing. Any move that big podcasts would do in the hopes of getting big brand advertising or making a big podcast that tried to make podcasting more narrow in that way is shooting themselves in the foot, because those people are out there. You want to make them be able to listen to podcasts no matter where they are, what they're doing. Do not make podcasting tied to a particular store, a particular application, or anything like that. That'd be so dumb. This is the beginning of the ad.
We are also sponsored this week by Backblaze. Go to backblaze.com/ATP for unlimited, unthrottled, native online backup for Mac and PC. There's no credit card required for your 15-day free trial, so go check it out today. Let me tell you why you need online backup. There's so many things that can happen to any backups you keep locally. Theft, floods, power surge, fire. Online backup is a great insurance policy against this kind of risk. And it's really convenient too. So for instance, you can do things like, oh, you know what, I forgot this one spreadsheet I was working on. Let me log into Backblaze, pull it off there while I'm on my trip. And you can get it on your phone, your tablet, or your laptop. It's great. I use it for that a lot. It's very, very nice. I have used many online backup services. Backblaze is the one I stick with. I was a customer of theirs before they were a sponsor. It is so great. We have combined something like 4 or 5 terabytes of data backed up to Backblaze because it's unlimited. $5 per month per computer. And we have 5 terabytes in there so far. It is crazy how good Backblaze is. And in my experience, how much better it is than the competition. Backblaze is great. You can do restores either on the web, or even if you want to have them mail you a hard drive, you can do that. They will overnight you a hard drive with all your data on it if you don't want to wait for a big download. And if you return one of those drives by mail within 30 days, you get a refund for the drive. So it's basically a free restore with a mailed hard drive, which is really great. They already have over 200 petabytes of data stored for their customers. They've restored over 10 billion files, and this is a great insurance policy And, online backup, because, you have this a little bit additional overhead of restoring, I still do recommend having a local backup, something like Time Machine or a Super Duper Clone or something like that. But having Backblaze as well for the just in case and the convenience of the remote access, I do recommend that, and I do it myself, and it's fantastic. So check it out. There's no gimmicks. There's no charges. $5 per month per computer for unlimited, unthrottled, off-site online backup. Go to backblaze.com/ATP, and you will get a free 15-day trial. Thanks a lot to Backblaze.
And this is the end of the ad.
So we talked about an episode or two ago how I felt like it's been trendy to dislike the Apple Watch. Well, it's been trendy to really, really, really freaking love the Amazon Echo. I do not have one. I don't know that I've ever...
Yet.
Sure, probably. I've never seen one in person to my recollection, but everyone that I know swears by it, loves it, etc. And so it seems like everyone's getting really infatuated with voice-based control. And the people who did Siri, which was that software was eventually bought up by Apple, and I believe the company was as well. So a lot of the ex-Siri people have gone on to create Viv, which is kind of the spiritual successor to Siri, and they demoed it on Monday. Now, I didn't have the time to watch the video, but my understanding was this was something pretty darn impressive.
Impressive if you don't think about it too much, I guess.
Why do you say that?
I have Hound. I've seen the Viv things. Maybe this only bothers people like me, but on the flip side of it, I think none of these things are up to the point where they pass the regular person threshold of magic, because as we've discussed many times in the past with Siri, the problem with Siri and things like that is, and you'll see when you have any kid use Siri for 5 seconds, people immediately jump to, oh, this is a little person in my computer. But obviously it's not. And as soon as they discover the very real and very close limits of any of these things, it breaks the illusion. It's like, oh, I thought this was like a little person in my computer I could talk to. Instead, it's just a crappy program that's like, it basically boils down to like playing a text adventure game where you have to learn the syntax and what you can say and what you can't say. And it's disappointing. It's disappointing to people. And then they kind of put it in a bin with, I thought it was going to be this magical thing where I can talk to a person on my phone. Really, it's just like the voice version of the command line where I have to learn the things that it can do, first of all, and then I have to learn the ways I can say the things that it can do. And granted, there are many ways that you can say it, maybe more than in the average text adventure, but probably about the same as in any good text adventure. And the new demo is like showing off context, like, oh, it kind of remembers the last thing I said to it, so I can refer back to it using, as long as I use the right words, and it will understand what I'm talking about and build on my past conversations, and it's like I'm having a conversation. If you see a demo with a preset script, it seems to be very impressive until you realize there is only a very small number of things that you can ask about, and those things aren't always interesting to you. Like, it's if you want to ask about facts that you can pull out of Wolfram Alpha, or things having to do with the weather, or date and time, or unit conversions, then you can have this amazing but extremely boring conversation about stuff that you don't really care about. But if you really want to know something more complicated, you better hope that's within the problem domain. I'm not saying whether these are bad products. I think they're amazing, and we need to keep advancing on this, and it's great. But like I said, as soon as you have a voice talking to you, or they can understand what you're saying, people immediately jump to, this is HAL 9000, or like it's a little person. But it's totally not a little person. It's so far from that there's always the inevitable letdown. So as we continue to march there, progress there, I think that's good. But this slight diversion with Viv or Viv, or however you want to say it, and all those other ones bothers me as the type of person who like reads the Wirecutter or Marco's headphones reviews or Marco's light bulb reviews or anything like that, and that the very boldly stated business model of these companies is, we will make deals with other companies so you can say, have a pizza delivered to my house at 5 p.m. and also send flowers to my mom for Mother's Day. And you're like, wow, what an amazing demo. It's like having a personal assistant. But you don't get to pick what pizza it is or what company sends the flowers. The company that makes the product that you're talking to does deals with Domino's and Pro Flowers, and that's what gets sent. Not because those are the best flowers or because your assistant knows the best flowers to get for your mom or the kind of pizza that you like, but because these are the deals the company whose voice agent that you're talking to made, made partnerships with. And so their incentives are all screwed up. Their incentives of the supposed personal assistant is not to help you get the things that you want in your life. It's to dutifully follow through on the business deals that the company's made. And all these companies are looking for, if we make this thing so sticky that people love talking to it and just like rely on it as part of their life, then we can charge people a lot of money to, like the same way that Google can charge money for search results. We got everybody typing into our search box. Now all of a sudden you buy advertising keywords or search keywords for us. It's very valuable. If everybody does all their pizza ordering, then we can charge whatever pizza company a lot of money to say, do you want to be the pizza company that fulfills pizza requests? But obviously people like me, and I think a lot of people kind of care where their pizza comes from. Maybe they don't care so much about where their flowers come from, but the model that they should be presenting is, here is an artificially intelligent agent or whatever. The agent's good 90s Apple thing. The knowledge navigator is going to help you in your life. It's supposed to be helping me. It's supposed to be like, I want it to do things that, if it's going to save me work, I would go and figure out what the best dishwasher is and what the comparative features are and stuff like that. Or, I would, if I moved into a new area, I would, troll reviews to try to find out where do people like, the best pizza, or, ratings, or like, I want it to figure out what I want in my life, what my needs are, and follow through on that. But I don't know if there's money to be made on that, because we're not willing to pay for that service. So someone's got to pay, and the people who are paying is Domino's, and you're going to get a stupid Domino's pizza. And so
you get what you deserve.
Right. And it's just, it's misaligned incentives, but I don't know the way out of it, because aligned incentives would be, you pay me $5 a month for the privilege of using Siri or Vive, and no one wants to do that either, because they're not good enough for $5 a month. It's like, no, I'll just do the web search myself, or I'll just go to the Wirecutter myself, right? So I don't know how you find your way out of this. It could be, I don't know. It could be that most people are fine with that. They're like, I don't really want to know or care what deals you make behind the scenes, as long as somebody comes and picks up my package. I don't care what they ship it by or anything. Like, just they're not as picky. They're not reading reviews about their light bulbs, right? They're just like, whatever. It's just convenient for me to be able to do this, and I don't really care what company or product is involved, and I don't care what deals are made behind the scenes, and I don't care that my needs aren't the most primary thing. It's a service I get for free. It's built into my phone, or I yell it into the air, and Amazon Echo does it. I don't care that all the products are fulfilled through Amazon, or, it's like pushing that button for paper towels. At least you get to pick, because Amazon has a wide variety, but I don't care that they all come from Amazon. Maybe most people are fine with that. But for me personally, I don't like it. And I also think that the misaligned incentives will just become a larger and larger problem until and unless these services actually become so good that people are willing to pay for them. Because wouldn't you pay $5 a month to have a personal assistant who you could just shout orders to and would do stuff, and it was not actually a person, and you didn't have to like care about their feelings and well-being or anything? Like, that's the dream of an artificial intelligent personal assistant from every movie about the future, where you just yell things into the air and things get done. And wouldn't you love it if that assistant learned more about you and about what you like and what you dislike, and did the research for you and collaborated with other agents, and just sort of asked your reaction to the meal you're just eating, and instead of you having to hit a star rate? Like, that's the magical future we think about, and I think everyone would be willing to pay for that, because paying for an actual personal assistant to do all that stuff is really expensive. $5 a month looks like a bargain. But we're not there yet. The products just aren't that good. So in the meantime, Domino's will be paying them to deliver you execrable pizza to your house.
I love that, that your dream scenario here is that you can basically have a virtual person who is totally basically your slave, and you can be a jerk to.
But it's not actually a person. It's just a computer. But you don't have to be a jerk to it, but you also don't have to worry about they don't sleep, don't eat, don't get annoyed when you're frustrated, don't get annoyed if you yell at them. That's why we use computers, because we don't have to have this constant, we're not trying to emotionally support our computers most of the time. We just want them to do what we tell them to do when we do it, because they're machines and they're not people, right? And that's the dream of having the computers, just think it not as a personal assistant, but rather think of it as the using a computer without having to sit in front of a computer and click on things or touch a screen or type things in. You're just talking into the air, and then somewhere else a computer is doing your thing. And the whole machine learning angle of the same way a personal assistant would learn your preferences and everything. That's what computers are great at. That's what Netflix is great at, by seeing what we watch, and we have to help with the silly way of hitting stars and stuff, but eventually Netflix gets good at thinking, I think you will like this movie based on movies you've seen in the past and have liked. It's incredibly primitive compared to what we could do if we had a conversational long-term relationship with a a voice controlled thing that was on our side and was entirely made to try to make our lives better. But again, there's no business model for that, and the tech still isn't quite there. But I feel like we can get there eventually. And once we do, someone is going to get $5 a month from a hell of a lot of people once that becomes good enough.
Well, but it doesn't have to be that it's $5 a month. I mean, it could be that this future Siri or what have you, it takes a cut of whatever it facilitates a sale for. So,
but then it's incentivized to make deals with the highest bidder who makes crappy pizza. Back to the crappy pizza problem.
Well, perhaps, but first of all, Domino's Pizza is not crappy. Second of all,
oh my God, it's so bad. What are you talking about?
Hi, John.
Yeah, I'm with John. Sorry, Casey. That's just inexcusable.
You guys are you're way too snooty. Anyway, the point is that why couldn't we have a hypothetical conversation where I say, "Hey Siri, I'd like a pizza, please." Sure. Where would you like it from? Papa John's or Domino's or what have you. I mean, presumably it would have to be some national chain. So it's not going to be.
But then how do you get paid? How does that service get paid? You think it's just taking a cut of that? Because
Right.
It's kind of like Grubhub or whatever. Like they'd have to kind of opt in. The money's got to come from somewhere, because unless you want to pay extra for that pizza and like have this, Siri surcharge of express, because Grubhub is so freaking expensive. Like there's lots of services that kind of do a small portion of what we would imagine Vive or Siri doing, but all of them, the disincentive is, this is great if you have money to burn and you can't be bothered to go someplace and you don't mind your food being cold by the time it gets here and you don't mind waiting a long time and half the time it doesn't work. Like there's so many caveats, but the money is a big deterrent. $5 a month for the blanket service of essentially just connecting the dots to things that you could do themselves. That works financially if you have enough people do it, as does Domino's being the exclusive will bring you a crappy pizza provider. But I feel like the percentage of everything is just back to the Grubhub model, and it's that has proven to be good for in my day we would say yuppies, but like good for people who with high paying jobs and not a lot of time and more money. Money is less important to them than their time, and so they do that. And even those things, you're kind of like, sometimes it's more worth it for you to go there yourself and get the thing. I don't know.
Everyone needs to.
I mean, would any of us order a pizza in that way? Even if you could, if you could tell at the store, but it charged you 20% on top of that, would you order a pizza that way?
I mean, if I was in a position where I didn't want to sit down at a computer or at an iPad or an iPhone, and I just wanted to, within 30 seconds, say, "Hey Siri, get me." Oh, I forgot I can't say that. Sorry. Well, it's too late now.
I'll beep it.
Yeah. What do they say on Upgrade?
Ahoy telephone.
Thank you. I wanted to say aloha. Ahoy telephone.
Yeah, aloha
get me a pizza, a large pepperoni, no pineapple pizza from Domino's delivered to my house.
Your bad taste continues.
You're in favor of this bullshit Siri pepperoni and pineapple?
I honestly have not tried pepperoni and pineapple yet, but I do like pineapple and ham. I don't get that a lot in New York because they don't really do it here because it's not canonical, John. But I do enjoy that combo when I can get it. But yeah, normally, I like pepperoni and I like pineapple, so
There was a ham and pineapple discussion, but I'm not sure if it's on a podcast that has yet to be released. Did you hear me talk about Hawaiian pizza on any podcast? If not, it hasn't been released, so I won't spoil it.
I did hear you talk about it. I forget which show it was on.
Yeah, same here.
It might have been when you guessed it on Upgrade. You did that recently, right?
Yeah, maybe that was it. But anyway, yeah, I don't want to get into it now.
All right, so the point is
Casey has terrible taste in pizza, so his answer to this question is irrelevant.
Whatever. If you, Marco and John / you
switch to hamburgers if you need to.
Oh no, because then I'm going to tell you I think Wendy's is just fine, and then you're going to bust my balls about that too.
All right. What are they like in the South? How about barbecue?
Oh, God.
Yeah. Would you just get it from Dallas Barbecue because it doesn't matter? Would you be like, well, barbecue is barbecue? I mean, I guess Dallas Barbecue is fine.
But for all these things, though, like this, if the money's going to be coming from taking a cut, the money's got to come from somewhere. So it's got to be a surcharge, right? Because unless you have to have deals if you're going to take a cut, like the price remains the same, but they cut us in. You have to have deals for that. And if you don't, then you just have to add a surcharge because then you don't need deals on either end. But the surcharge is usually pretty significant. And that's in addition to whatever additional things they're charging you to deliver it, plus tip and all that other stuff.
Well, that's the thing exactly, though, because a delivery surcharge is a surcharge. You could, if you wanted, get in your car or ride your bike or walk or what have you and go fetch your pizza. But sometimes you just want the convenience of this meal magically showing up at your doorstep. I personally cannot imagine a time where I would want to say, hey, ahoy telephone, get me a Domino's large pizza. But there are certainly people in the world that may be willing to pay $1 or $2 or whatever the case may be to ahoy telephone themselves a pizza. I mean, Domino's lets you order pizza with emoji by some mechanism I've never tried. So I would imagine that there are people that are doing that too.
You ever wonder why Domino's has to make it so easy to order their pizza?
Fine. Okay. If you want to believe Domino's is gross, that's fine. All I know is, just listen to the forthcoming episode of Analog where we probably won't cut the discussion about people that are too good for chain restaurants and how much I hate all of them, which is basically everyone in the chat room and the two of you.
There are good chain restaurants. There just are very few good chain pizza restaurants, and I think most of them would be local chains that you wouldn't have heard of. But it's fine. No, it's fine. Also, if you're going to have chain pizza, I'm not sure Domino's is even the best one of those.
Well, what would it be?
I was always a bigger fan of like the really crappy ones, like Little Caesars or Pizza Hut, because it's like, if you're going to go with some really crappy big brand pizza, you might as well go like super crappy and get like all the junk food value of it.
I feel like I would get something frozen from the supermarket before I would take delivery from any chain.
Yeah, I did a lot of those too. Like a lot of like the big...
And those are not good. Don't get me wrong. They are terrible. That's how bad I think the delivery is.
Yeah.
You would take a Red Baron pizza over Domino's.
Not Red Baron, but maybe something else.
What is the thing? It's not delivery, it's DiGiorno. Man, that marketing works.
Nice.
That would kind of be like a matchup. Like a even match. Anyway, like we shouldn't have gotten to the pizza topic.
What? How is it so? Why?
Well, so moving on.
I can't imagine. No, I can't get. I can't get past this. I can't imagine a world where somebody says, "Man, I'd really like some pizza, and I'd like to get Domino's," and you have to be like, "Domino's is not good enough for me. I'm sorry. We're gonna have to go somewhere else."
Well, sometimes you have to eat things you don't like, but I think this is more of an issue for me even than Marco's thing, because Marco's like, he has this fancy coffee, right? But when he's on the road, he'll get Starbucks.
Yeah,
precisely.
When I'm on the road, the equivalent of me is I would choose not to have coffee.
Sometimes I do.
Like, that's the level I'm at with it. Same thing with pizza and bagel. I just don't get pizza if I can't get good pizza. And it's fine. I eat something else. And if someone else gets bad pizza, I'll eat it. You got to eat to stay alive, right? It's not, but I will never choose it. Like, whereas Marco, because he's addicted, will choose to get Starbucks because it's like, well, it's better than no coffee. But no, it's not better than no pizza. No pizza beats Domino's pizza.
Oh my God. If I ever get to the point that I'm this fussy about freaking anything.
It's not fussy. It's just a preference. Like, I don't consider it the same category of food. It's like, I'll just pick there's plenty of kind of foods to choose from. Like, I'm not that picky about burgers, right? I'll many more options for burgers, including ones from chains and lots of things from chains. But when it comes to pizza, I will just pick a different food product. And I don't think it's being snobbish. It's just kind of like, I don't like that. It doesn't taste good to me. I don't want it. And I don't need it for chemical reasons, so I will just pick something else. Like I'd rather have a sandwich from Subway than bad pizza.
Oh, I don't know about that.
And sandwiches from Subway are probably the bottom rung of thing that you can call a sandwich. Where we've lost, as people know in the chat room, we've lost the Domino's brand sponsorship, and we're losing the Subway brand sponsorship from the show. It's fine.
Well, this is why we can't have brand advertisers and podcasts, because we've already pissed off all the brands.
We'll take Waffle House sponsorships though, because I feel like they embrace what they are.
I was more of a Steak and Shake person myself over Waffle House.
I don't even understand why Subway is so bad. You're watching them create it in front of you.
You don't understand why Subway is bad? Please, Casey,
no.
Please stop. Please stop.
I don't.
No. I'm trying to help you here. Do not.
I know. I don't want your
Subway
help.
is not the hill you want to die on. Just
no.
Please.
No, I'm not saying that it's the hill I want to die on. I don't want your help. I want to be able to go to any friggin' restaurant I want and be genuinely happy with the meal I've had. I have gone to Subway, although not lately, and been genuinely happy with the meal I've had. Are there better sandwiches in the world? Abso-freaking-lutely.
Does that count as a restaurant?
Sure. Oh, God.
Subway, please.
I haven't been this angry at you two since the Mac Pro discussions. This is ridiculous. God. Just, if I ever get this fussy and high maintenance, just kick me in the shins.
What vodka would you drink, Casey? Would you drink the big handle of like the cheap Russian whatever vodka that comes in the plastic bottle? Would you drink that?
He just got to run it through Brita filters and it's fine.
How do you know that, John?
No, you didn't. You weren't privy to this?
Because it's the stupid secret of vodka is that, that whatever. Once I saw that, I don't drink, I don't know anything about it, but once I saw that thing with the filters, I'm like, all right, everyone who deals with vodka is just...
I thought that was BS. I know exactly what you're referring to, but I thought that was BS.
Maybe it is BS.
I might be wrong.
I'm entirely willing to believe it, especially with alcohol. After the first few drinks anyway, you can just like secretly switch to the crappier stuff and no one cares.
Well, that's true. Here's the thing. Like, I would absolutely choose a fussy vodka like Tito's if I had the choice. But if I don't have the choice, or if like a rail vodka's on happy hour, you know what you do? You just put a couple lemons in there, wait a second for it to get a little bit watered down with a little bit of lemon in it, and then you're fine. I'd prefer the Tito's for sure, but I am perfectly happy with a slightly watered down, slightly lemony vodka, and I'd be happier about that, having saved a bunch of money off getting a rail one instead of a Tito's. I would be happy with that. Although that is the best example I've heard so far of me being fussy.
Wouldn't you ruin like a $13 Brita filter by converting your cheaper vodka into $13 more expensive vodka?
You still come out ahead if you run it through enough times, so it's equivalent to like the $500 bottle.
Is there $500 vodka? Vodka's not that good.
I'm sure there is. I'm absolutely sure there is.
Oh, there absolutely is. And I should also note that my fussy vodka, Tito's, is like the cheapest of the fussy vodkas, which is part of the reason why I like it so much.
Yeah, I remember when you were coming over and we bought a bottle so that you would not judge our vodka collection because you're so judgy of things. Mm-hmm. I remember being very surprised how inexpensive it was because the way you talked about it, I thought it would be like a really premium priced one. But nope, turns out vodka's just terrible, so nobody prices it very high.
It's not terrible. Are you a gin drinker? You are a gin drinker, aren't you? Oh, how's your grass taste?
I occasionally drink gin. I not by itself. I mean, I prefer gin-based drinks like martinis to drinking it straight. But
oh god, a gin martini! Oh, I forgot.
Honestly, I'm not that much of a liquor person. I much prefer either not drinking or drinking beer.
Oh, so you like to drink your bread? I understand. I'm going to get so much angry email. I'm going to have to quit the show. It's going to be the worst. I
tried to help you with the Subway thing. It's not too late to ask Marco to cut it out.
Oh, this is staying in.
No, you can let it stay in.
Trying to get this back on the rails slightly. I will say, John, you were seemingly puzzled by the idea of why would somebody pay like a 20% premium for the convenience of ordering through like a cylinder robot voice.
Not why, but that your audience is limited. Because I know those services exist and I know the people who use them, but they're never going to be mass market because 20% is just too much for most people.
I'll tell you what, though. I would probably pay roughly that premium to avoid talking to somebody on the phone.
I hear you.
I know. I understand. Like, if
that was my only alternative, like, because like a lot of the places around here that in the area that I think John, the both of us live in, there's not a lot of chains present, and a lot of the places you order from are just like independently owned places, and so anything that relies on like, really convenient, like, or you can order with our app or things like that. Like most of the places around here don't support that because they're not a big enough operation to be integrated that way or to have their own app or whatever else. Which means A, I can't use Apple Pay anywhere. I can't even use my chip card anywhere, even in most places either. And B, they don't support like any of these automated ways of ordering. So if I want to order something, I'm still doing it the way the San Francisco people think is like barbaric, of like calling them on the phone and placing an order for delivery or going and picking it up in my car. And I hate talking on the phone so much, especially...
Me too.
Nerdy introverts with disposable income. Again, it's a narrow market. Like where the potential for agents that can do things conversationally without you having to type things or really pay attention, just yelling commands out into the air, the potential for that is mass market. But the number of people who are currently willing to pay to avoid phone calls and stuff, like, and don't blink at the 20% is just too small. Like, I feel these things that's another ding against these things that are funded by having deals with providers of their services, is that exactly the people who are the nerdy introvert people who don't want to make phone calls, those are exactly the people who read the Wirecutter and obsess over which light bulbs they're going to get. And those people will not be happy not being able to choose who provides their flowers or even who gives them their weather report. Or like, those are exactly the people who want the thing that's going to use big data to figure out what the best whatever is and learn your preferences and do all that stuff. They don't want to be hemmed into, particular vendors. And so I don't know, maybe Viva's just hoping to be purchased by Apple or Google or Alphabet or whatever, and that's their big exit plan there. But I am not a fan of this model where the product isn't good enough for users to pay for it yet, and the way they make their money is with back-end deals. And you have this agent who you have this personal assistant who can do a limited number of things, hopefully if you get the syntax right, and you have no control of or awareness over the companies that are fulfilling the things, and seemingly no way to give feedback about how well it went when the pizza arrived. Did you like it or did you not like it? Or could you say, get me a pizza, but not from that last place because it was gross?
So going back to the original topic here of these voice assistant things, I think there's a lot more to discuss here, which we probably don't have time for today, honestly. There's a lot more to discuss here about just how these things are and the kind of ecosystem around this. First of all, I think it would be a hilarious business model if the Siri founders just kept making things, selling them to Apple, and then just quitting and making the next thing, and then Apple buys that one.
Like, people do that all the time. That's the serial entrepreneur thing. You make a startup, you know exactly what to make, and you know that you have multiple potential buyers. You play them off each other, you sell, you do the next one. And what you get to do, I guess, is during all that time, do the fun part that you like, starting the company, doing the exciting thing or whatever, and you just have exit after exit. That's the way some people live their lives. Totally viable business model, especially in these days.
Well, so I do think, getting back, because it wouldn't be an episode of this show without a complaint about Apple.
We almost made it.
I know. I'm a little bit worried that this is an area where, Apple started this game, really. Like, Apple came out with Siri in 2011, right? Yeah, 2011. And, Apple started this whole thing, really. Like, there was voice command stuff before that, but Siri took it to another level and integrated it with the phone, and it was a big deal. And then since then, Siri has advanced, but fairly slowly and in fairly small steps. While at the same time, it seems like now there are multiple companies. There's Amazon, there's Amazon, Hound, Viv. There's all these companies now coming out with even better stuff that's like it seemed like a generation ahead of Siri in like the intelligence and the recognition and the accuracy and things like that. It seems like Apple kind of started this, and now everyone's kind of overrunning them. And I don't think Apple is like hustling. Like I've used this word before, that it seems like Apple recently lacks hustle. This isn't the only area that this applies to, where like Apple kind of starts something and then everyone else kind of rushes in and does their own version of it better, and Apple just kind of can't keep up. Is this a problem?
Well, I wouldn't call it hustle in this case. Like, do you remember when Jobs canned the ATG, Apple Technology Group or Advanced Technology Group? I forget what ATG stands for. Someone who works at Apple. But anyway, like, Apple used to do way more basic research type stuff. Like, that whole department whose job was to do like basic research type things, and in theory, maybe they would come up with a couple ideas that other groups in the company that made actual products would do. And Steve Jobs concentrated the whole company on like, no, don't do pie in the sky. Wouldn't it be cool if, let's investigate this kind of technology type thing? I mean, Brett Victor used to work at Apple, for crying out loud, right? And then Jobs was like, no, we want to make great products that ship now. And they've done that, and that's a very successful advanced technology group. The helpful Casey List says in the chat room. We want to make actual products, because it doesn't do anybody good to have these research ideas and maybe one of them shows up many years later. But things like Siri, that's the only real way you advance that is with some amount of basic research. So it feels like Apple found a company that was doing this thing, whatever the SRI company or wherever company Siri came from, that already had done the basic research, acquired them, productized it, and then is working the improvements to Siri you're talking about. A lot of them have to do with productized improvements, make it more reliable, make it faster, build it on a different platform. But the basic research needed to take Siri to the next level, I don't know if that is budgeted for and accounted for or dealt with within the realm of Siri, the product. Like, so they feel like they're advancing the product, and meanwhile the founders have left because they're like, I don't want to just incrementally advance this product or make it more reliable or faster. Like, that's your problem. I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in how do you make the next great personal assistant or whatever. And the fact that they felt like they had to leave Apple to do that, I mean, maybe it's, maybe they're misinformed and really there was a place for Apple for them to do that basic research and it should have been part of the plan or whatever. But the Apple of today is much less focused on basic research stuff. And they do, like, the things they do, like all that research into touch screens and stuff like that, that's not the same as basic research. It's more like pre-production product things, like ideas for future concrete products. And again, I think this is a great strategy, and it gives you great products instead of just great concept videos that don't actually lead to anything. It's been the cornerstone of Apple's success, so you can't really fault them for that. But I think it's also the reason that Google, who does tons of crazy ideas and basic research stuff in-house that just never goes anywhere, which we criticize them for, and startups who their whole point is like, oh, you have a great idea, let's see it. And half of them die and you don't care, but if any of them end up being successful, as we said before, Apple can just buy them again. That I think is actually a viable strategy. Like, if they can't or don't want to support that type of advancement in-house, allow it to flourish out in the market, wait for all the crappy ones to die, find the ones that are left and buy them at the right time, because one thing Apple does have is a lot of money. So maybe Apple buys Viv and the next version of Siri is powered by that. And who can say that's a bad strategy? It's just uncomfortable during this time now where we see, like, seemingly everybody else can do Siri better than Apple can. And Apple's just barely working on, can we make existing Siri reliable and a little bit smarter and expand the capabilities? And by the way, still no API, so no real ecosystem or whatever. And that I think is uncomfortable, but I don't think it's insurmountable because you just throw money at whatever the most successful thing is. The problem is if Google is the one who does the Siri better than Siri, which arguably they already have, because Google's not going to sell you their stuff. So that's a problem for Apple. But Viv or Vive is not a problem for Apple. It's an opportunity.
I'm going with Vive.
No, that's the HTC VR thing.
Yeah, but I'm never going to get that.
Or is that Vive too? I don't even know.
That's Viv. All right, thanks so much for our 3 sponsors this week. Fracture, FreshBooks, and Backblaze. And we will see you next week.
Now the show is over. They didn't even mean to begin. 'Cause it was accidental. Oh, it was accidental. John didn't do any research. Marco and Casey wouldn't let him. 'Cause it was accidental. Oh, it was accidental. And you can find the show notes at atp.fm. And if you're into Twitter, you can follow them at CASEYLISS. So that's Casey Liss, MARCOARMENT, Marco Arment, SIRAC, USA Syracuse. It's accidental. They didn't mean to. Accidental. Tech podcast so long.
So Instagram changed their icon and everyone lost their...
I don't like the icon that much, but I don't think it's the total dumpster fire that everyone else says.
It's pretty bad. It's pretty bad. Do you remember when Web 2.0 was a thing? You guys remember Web 2.0?
Yeah, gradients and rounded corners.
Yeah, the Web 2.0 parody sites that would like make fun of all of the design tropes of Web 2.0. The Instagram icon looks like a modern version of making fun of the flat design tropes.
I could see that.
Like if you tried to do a parody icon of, like, imagine if the Instagram icon adopted all of the current fashion trends in the most obvious and glaring ways, you would get that stupid thing. But
I don't think it's that bad. I mean, it's not as bad as Domino's Pizza or vodka.
I mean, like it's fine. Like whatever. Like it has some things going for it, especially if you look at their alternate designs and how boring some of those were. I like the design that was like a black square with a white circle in the middle of it. It's like, just, let's workshop that a little bit more. At least this one has something to it. It will stand out a little bit on people's screens because it's not just a flat color. I don't know, like as so many people have said on Twitter, and as I've said about Windows XP ad bumper sounds, in the end, it doesn't matter that much because long term, eventually you will come to associate with whatever the hell image they make. You will come to associate that with Instagram, and kids who are just getting their first iPhones now who don't know what the old icon looked like will be fine with it and it will just cruise in. But it is not the type of, I think that explains why it's not a disaster. But I think you can also have an icon that the initial impression is that it's a nice, well-designed, pleasing icon, and it also will come to be associated with the application that you know and love. Like, you don't have to, it's not as if it's an either or. Well, you can have an icon that is immediately attractive, but it will be crap long-term. No, it'll also be good long-term. So I feel like this one is a missed opportunity to make a better icon, and I don't particularly like it, but it'll be fine. It's not disastrous. Like, what was that disastrous one? Like when they tried to do the Tropicana orange juice and they backpedaled on it. You always know it's disastrous if they change their mind. So come back in 2 shows from now and see if they change the icon back, but I have a feeling they won't because it's not that bad.
The other changes they've made recently are more offensive. That like the icon, like they replaced one crap icon with another crap icon. Like the old icon was crap too. It was just
it was just crap. That had a really good branding. Like it was
yeah, it looked great in iOS 6.
Right, and it stayed a long time, but at a certain point, when you're the last one standing, I think it becomes sort of an act of defiance or like a quirk. And only one icon gets to do that. You can't have a home screen that has like 6 icons that still look like iOS 6. But if only one does it, you're like, all right, sure, go with that. But yeah, it did need to be updated, and they had a difficult challenge, but. Inside the app, I actually like. I like the fact that it doesn't look like the central item on the toolbar is constantly selected. I like the fact that stupid blue is gone. I'm a pretty big fan.
Yeah, I completely agree. I really, really like the new look of the app, and I think you and I are mostly on the same page about the icon. Like, I don't love it, but I don't think it's bad. I also didn't think the last one was bad. Yes, it looked outdated, but I completely concur that the branding was great. I think I would have preferred just a flattened or perhaps simplified version of the old icon. But
that would have been pretty timid, though. If they did that, everyone would have been like, oh, you did the obvious thing. You just made a flat-shaded version of the camera. And I think that would be more difficult. I think that would actually be less successful than this because
you're
although
right.
It may be immediately kind of inoffensive, you won't have gone anywhere. This at least is, you can tell they made a change. It's not like, oh, it's a subtle tweak. Nope, big change.
Well, and on top of that, this icon definitely stands out, which presumably is the goal, right? It's not another damn blue icon. It's something that is a color palette that looks different than anything else I have on my home screen. And of course, that may not be true for everyone, but it's certainly the case on my phone. I mean, it jumps out at me on my home screen. It is on my very, very first home screen because that's how much I love this damn app. So I think the icon's okay. I'm sure I'll come to think it's decent over time, like you had said, John, but I completely agree. I love the muted look of the app itself so that damn near all the color is either profile pictures or the actual photos on Instagram. I really, really like it.
I wish I could pay money to get rid of the ads, though. The ads in my Instagram feed are just oppressive. Like, maybe I don't follow enough people, but it seems like every 5th thing is a giant ad. I'm seeing, or rather scrolling past without looking, way too many friggin' ads on Instagram. Like, please, I would give them $1 a month. Maybe that's not worth it to them. So I'll just continue to scroll past the ads. But I know some people are like, oh, I don't see any ads in my feed, and I don't know what algorithm I've tripped to make them spam me with ads like crazy, but too many ads.
Yeah, I mean, for a while I had no ads and it was great. Then a few months ago I started getting a very heavy ad load like what you were describing, and it really almost ruined Instagram for me. And I didn't go back for a while. I guess my engagement dropped. And then recently I just kind of stopped seeing ads. Like it like flipped back off for me. But the other day, about 2 days ago, I somehow got switched to the algorithmic timeline. And they could put any icon they wanted into the ugliest graphical theme they wanted. Just give me my stupid chronological timeline back. Because the algorithmic timeline, I mean, I'm just not used to it, so maybe I will get used to it and appreciate it. And I've never used anything else with an algorithmic timeline. I don't read Facebook. Like I technically have an account there, but I literally have never used it to read its news feed. I've never done that. I don't use like YouTube subscriptions or things like that to like browse YouTube. And whatever Twitter is doing with their algorithmic thing, I don't whatever, maybe it doesn't show up in Tweetbot. I don't see it. I've never seen it. So this is the first time I'm ever actually seeing an algorithmic timeline in something that previously didn't have one. And it's terrible. Like, it doesn't make any sense. Like, I'm seeing pictures out of order that they happened. I have no idea when I've like seen everything. I'm seeing things that don't make sense, that make me think that I've reached completion, but then I haven't, because I see right below it like, oh, here's one that I saw 12 hours ago, and then right below it is one from 8 minutes ago. And it's like, you got to be kidding me.
For all these years I've been using Instagram, I think I've mentioned this before, but what I do is I launch the Instagram app, and it shows me whatever picture I was viewing last time, briefly.
Yeah, that refreshes.
Right. And then I I memorize in that brief moment. I memorize what that image is, and then I scroll backwards till I get to it.
Yep, same here.
I'm basically doing my own tweet marker.
Yeah, don't get used to that.
Because that's how I read it. I'm an Instagram completionist, and I read them chronologically, and I don't want to miss any. It's slightly confused by the fact that I see a lot of them cross-posted to Twitter, because sometimes I think, oh, I've seen that one already. I must have gone too far, but no, that's why I got to memorize the one that flashed.
My God, I know exactly what you're saying.
If they ever fix the app so it doesn't flash the last image you saw on the screen right before it refreshes the timeline, it would totally screw with my workflow. So if I got hit with the algorithmic one, I don't know what I would do. Maybe I'd just stop using Instagram, but I'll have to try it.
Honestly, that's what I'm considering it, because it's that bad. Like, so I'm reading my timeline now. I have 4 hours ago, 3 hours ago, 4 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours, 10 hours, 1 day, 8 hours, 2 days, 10 hours, 1 day. Like it's completely, it's just shuffled. 12 hours, like it's just shuffled. Like I'll see things even like, so you might be able to say, oh, well, like I noticed that it puts my wife up top, because I usually like her photos and I try to see them all. It even shows her photos out of order. It is so disruptive. And I can't find any option anywhere to flip it back. I think this is just something that they're presumably doing to either boost some engagement thing that they measured once on Facebook, or they want a new revenue stream of like charging the brands that you follow to appear higher up in your stream, or both.
Yep.
It's
so charging brands to make more people see their things. You have 20 million followers, but we'll show your thing to 10 of them unless you pay us.
Yeah, it's like you earn those followers. Those people all said, I want to see everything this person posts, and we're going to charge you for access to the audience that you earned. Yeah, that's the Facebook model. And Facebook owns Instagram, so that's probably what this is for. And man, it sucks as a user. I feel so bad now for literally the entire rest of the world who actually uses Facebook, who, trying to make sense of that newsfeed. And I remember when they made that change to the newsfeed a few years back, I remember everybody was all upset, and I didn't really understand why. But now I do, because it completely changes the nature of the service, and it kind of breaks it for me. Like I really don't like this, and I think this is going to reduce my usage of Instagram substantially.
I think maybe I'm wrong about this, but Instagram seems not uniquely vulnerable, but more vulnerable than usual to, if they screw things up, to someone saying, all right, well, I'll just make an Instagram that worked like it used to. Like, imagine one that actually kept track of where you were in the timeline and just did it straight ahead.
I believe it's called Tweetbot.
I know, but is the social graph so embedded? Because you can't do that to Facebook. Facebook has too many features, too many users, it's too big. Instagram has a lot of users, but not a lot of features, and it's still kind of an island unto itself. Like, they haven't really totally integrated with Facebook at this point. So if Instagram really does screw things up, and maybe there's a generation of people who are like, oh, they're stuck on Instagram, but like, look at Snapchat. It comes out of nowhere. You can grab new users with a new product that people find compelling. And if Instagram breaks everybody's workflows, who they care about, there is a market opportunity for someone to do a very straightforward iOS app that shows you the pictures your friends took in order, and has a simple asymmetrical following process like Twitter, and has likes and comments. Like, it's not technologically unfeasible. All that's required is for Facebook to anger enough people to make a viable market for some other small competitor, even if it's just like a company that's never going to be as big as Facebook. It's never going to be big as Instagram, never going to usurp Instagram, but merely become an alternative. I guess you could consider it a successful app.net for Instagram.
Oh, damn it. You took the joke right away from me. I was so excited to make that joke, but never mind.
It's not a joke. I mean, it's a thing that could possibly happen. Like, it's not inconceivable that could be a thing, depending on how badly Instagram screws it up and how many people's workflow it actually does disrupt. For all we, as people saying in the chat room, if you follow tons of people, an algorithmic timeline is indistinguishable from a non-algorithmic one, because you're never keeping track of anything anyway. You just launch the app and you scroll until you're satisfied or something. Do people scroll backwards? Like, they launch the app, they get zipped to the top of their timeline, and they scroll the other way?
I do, yeah.
Until they see a picture that they recognize already, then they stop?
Yep.
Is that how people use it?
That's the only way you really could use it before.
No, you can use it the way I was using it, and the way Casey was using it.
Yeah.
Memorize the picture, scroll. It's like a little game. Scroll. Found it. Now go through them.
Oh, see, I misunderstood. I actually do what you just described. I misunderstood your original point.
When it loads, I see the picture. I see the picture of Mike Mattis took pictures of cows in a field, and that blinks on the screen for a second, and then it loads 50 other pictures. Then I scroll down to find the cow picture, and then I see the cow picture, and then I move it down.
But then you're spoiling it.
Yeah.
I go past them really fast.
Oh, come on.
What you have to do is you have to pay an assistant $5 a month to scroll for you.
Like I say, Vive, take me to the picture that I last saw. Which again, when I first played with Instagram, I'm like, maybe I don't understand how this app works. Is it broken? How do regular people use Instagram? Because every time I launch it, I want it to show me the last picture I saw. The same way every time I launch a Twitter app, I want it to show me the last tweet I read. Frustrating.
I think the way regular people do it, if they care enough at all, is what you just described and what I do, and it sounds like what Marco does, which is, okay, memorize what I just saw, and then start at the top and keep
and
going.
Stop when you hit it.
Right, exactly.
I'm too old to keep that in short-term memory for that long. I have a couple of seconds before it leaves my head entirely. Scroll, cow, stop, good. And then I don't have to remember that picture anymore.
Well, the problem is the cross posts also screw me up too, because then I convince myself that the one I just saw, like that I'd seen on Twitter previously, was the one that flashed when I opened the app, and sometimes that's not right.
That's why you gotta try my technique. It's you only have to remember it for a very short period of time, and you can immediately forget it.
Enjoy it while you can.
Don't close the Instagram app though, because when you relaunch it, if it get purged out of memory, then you'll be back to the top again.
I never noticed that, but now that you say that, you're absolutely right. I never thought about it that way.
That's why funny. I follow like 3 people on Instagram. I'm able to maintain this workflow.
Wow.
Just give me my regular timeline back, for God's sake.
I'm going to get so many fucking emails.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
I think that you will find there are some kin of the Subway defenders.
Someone already wrote just me, of course, saying that I'm not crazy and that it's okay to like things that other people don't like.
Yeah, they were too scared to send that to all of us, huh?
Apparently.
But Subway is vile. Subway is vile, though, seriously.
Oh, yeah, Subway's the worst.
Oh, yeah, but, Sbarro Pizza, that's so much better.
Sbarro Pizza is better than Subway. Yes, you're correct.
Is it? I don't.
Yes,
I don't think
it's equivalent. It is absolutely equivalent.
No, it is better. It is better. It is a better food product. It's not a good food product, but it's better.
I think there is something I could order at Subway that I would rather have than anything Sbarro would serve.
No, because here's the thing with Sbarro. They have dough, they have sauce, they have cheese. They assemble them and they make them hot. Dough is not good, sauce is not good, the cheese is not good.
How is that any different than Subway?
Subway has something that you think is bread, but is actually some kind of mold that grows into a bread shape. It's like this little mutant bread fetuses that have so many preservatives and chemicals in them, right? And then the cold cuts are, I don't know what they are, but like they're just, are they frozen? Are they like they're not, they don't look like or taste like what cold cuts are supposed to be. Like we know what cold cuts are supposed to be. You go to the store, you slice them, you get them like these sort of, I don't know what's wrong with them. They just like look and taste like preservatives and come in these little units that they're just not right.
But what do you think is the ingredient quality at Sbarro's?
Right.
Well, but that's what I'm saying. I feel like their cheese is more like real cheese. Like there's nothing to go wrong
Based
like
on
that. Like there's
what?
there's no equivalent of like salami. Like salami is a difficult product to get right, and Subway salami is, I don't know what the hell it is. Like same thing with their cheese, same thing. Just the little pre-assembled, like here's the ingredients for this type of sandwich slapped on there. And again, the bread and the cold cuts are such a big part of it. Then you can say, okay, well maybe their tomatoes and lettuce are fine. Maybe their tomatoes and lettuce are fine, equivalent to whatever the Sbarro is using. But Sbarro has no equivalent. Even the pepperoni, I feel like pepperoni is the type of product where you're not, there is no sort of gold standard for pepperoni. There's lots of variability, and it's all kind of crappy in one way or the other. But just, the sauce, dough, and cheese, I feel like is a higher quality, as like these are honest products. Not good tasting products at Sbarro, but they're honestly there. Whereas at Subway, they're taking a sandwich and screwing up the bread and the cold cut parts of it. And then I'm like, all right, I'm out. That's it. What else is left? Like, I'm not going to go there for the tomatoes and the lettuce. It is incredibly vile.
This is cognitive dissonance.
What about the cheese triangles, John?
The cheese, the tessellation. I mean, that's just that's just a silly problem, assembly problem. But although cheese shouldn't really be triangle shaped, really. I mean, it should be squares or circles, right? I mean, who makes triangle cheese? It's just like, why are they even bothering to cut it into that shape?
Well, I think it starts out as a square.
I know, and they cut it into triangles. Why? So they can screw up the tessellation and anger people? It doesn't make any sense.
I don't understand. You're just waving your hands in the air and like you just don't care and saying, "Oh, Sbarro has great ingredients, but Subway, they can't be great."
And not great ingredients. They're more straightforward and honest. Like no one's going to say that pizza dough isn't pizza dough, whereas I think their bread
Nobody
is not
says
bread.
that.
No, their bread is. It's like eating a hot dog bun.
They make it fresh every day.
Bake it fresh from what? From what? from terrible like mushroom mold spore bread fetuses.
Oh, and Sbarro doesn't get shipped the same bread, probably from the same damn bakery.
It's dough. It's not. It's pizza dough is more straightforward too. Like here's the problem.
Is it?
There are so many good places where you can get maybe you have to be from New York and understand delis. Like if you want a sandwich with cold cuts on it, it's not a high bar. There's a billion delis in New York State that can give you a sandwich with cold cuts on it that is so much better than Subway that you should just never pretend that store doesn't even exist anymore. Like you can go to Whole Foods and get a better sandwich. Like you can go to any supermarket and have them assemble you a sandwich with cold cuts on it that's better than Subway. You can go to Panera, also way better than Subway. Like I can't think of anything worse than Subway. How can you? Is there any place that will sell you a worse sandwich than Subway? This is my question. I can't think of one. Like
okay, but
the airport,
that.
when they're wrapped in saran wrap, those sandwiches are better than Subway. This is what I'm getting at. Like at least they have real bread on them.
Even like when Arby's added sandwiches to their menu like a while back, they're way better than Subway sandwiches, and that's from Arby's.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Like, and again, those are probably literal hamburger buns.
No, like they actually got like bread, and like they started stocking all like bread and cold cuts and stuff, and they started making those.
Subway is I feel like the bottom rung of any chain food in the world. I guess probably in the world. I can't think of anything worse.
Ooh, Utah Brian just pointed out what is worse. Which I assume he said the plastic triangle sandwiches. I assume he's talking about the ones you get like in gas stations.
That's what I was saying. I was saying at the plastic triangle sandwiches at the airport are better than Subway. They probably give you food poisoning and kill you.
No,
John.
No, because they're made with real bread. And you know,
what?
Are you sure?
The internal ingredients are going to be gross, but most of that grossness is because they've been there for a long time, which is also why you're going to get food poisoning, which is why you shouldn't eat them. But based on like what are they made of? They're made of bread. And the ingredients in them,
they're made of pathogens.
Sometimes the airport sandwiches are bad because they're made with ingredients that don't have enough preservatives in them, and they just sit there and they get all gross. Like it's like any airplane food. Like they try to make it out of good ingredients, but if you have this pre-cooked chicken and tomatoes, and then you let them sit there, and you're like, this would have been better with preservatives because this has just sat there too long and gone through too many pressure changes, and now it's just a vile, rubbery, tasteless mess.
You know what's infuriating about doing this show with you, John, is that you are just completely and utterly wrong. Completely wrong. I could concede that Subway is not great food. I'm not arguing that. But you are...
Name a worse sandwich. Name a worse sandwich.
Hold on. The airport sandwiches are unequivocally worse. But the problem is, because everyone on the internet thinks you can never say anything that's wrong ever, now we're going to get 1,000 emails with people saying, oh, John is completely right.
I'm trying to help you here. Subway really is the bottom.
Okay,
really.
well, okay. Let's concede for the sake of discussion that Subway is the worst. Let's just assume, even though it's not, but let's assume it is. I don't understand why you think Sbarro is any better or different. Pizza dough is the same kind of dough that's shipped from some factory in West Bumblescrew into the local Sbarro that the Subway dough is. And every day at Subway they cook the dough. You think they make the friggin' dough at the Sbarro?
Rip the crust off a Sbarro thing. That crust has more bread-like qualities than any bread ever to come out of Subway.
I don't know what
crispier,
crap
crunchier
Subway
crust because it's cooked at high temperature. It is more chewy and gluten-y. It is much more like bread. Not particularly good tasting bread, but much more like bread than that stuff in Subway. You
and I are going to opposite Sbarros and Subways. Like, again, I'm not trying to say that Subway is the definition of good food. I'm not saying that. But I cannot reconcile in my head that you think that Sbarro is leaps and bounds better than Subway, because they are, to my eyes, of effectively the same quality. I like both.
It's better. I wouldn't say leaps and bounds. It's better, but it's better. Like, and a lot of it is because degree of difficulty. It's got so few ingredients, and none of them are weird mutant versions of legit ingredients.
Pizza has so many more ingredients.
You're saying it's easier to make good pizza than a good sandwich?
Right.
It's easier to make pizza with actual honest ingredients. Like,
how can you
cold
say
cuts
that?
are a serious problem. Like, any kind of cold cuts are like. It's very difficult there's a high degree of difficulty there. It's not simple like, sauce, cheese, and bread made really hot in an oven. Cold cuts are a processed product that is complicated to make, that has a lot of variety. What the things that are similar between roast beef and turkey and salami, Like, there's a huge range of expertise that you need to make any of those decently.
But they're not making them in each location. They're buying that in.
I know, but where they're buying them from is like the lowest bidder, and they're so incredibly vile that they should not even be called salami or even their ham or their turkey. Everything is just terrible. Like, again, something like Panera, who has similar challenges. Their Italian combo at Panera is not a good Italian sandwich. The cold cuts on it are not good, and yet still way better than the ones at Subway.
Everything you're saying about Subway, how does that not apply to Sbarro?
Thank you.
Because, like I said, mozzarella cheese is it's hard to screw up. It's a very simple cheese. It doesn't need to be aged. It's inexpensive. And most of it tastes like more or less like mozzarella cheese. It's not a complicated product like salami or slicing ham or roast beef or anything. Like, mozzarella cheese is very straightforward. So is the dough. It's very straightforward dough. It's not a complicated dough. It's not a sourdough. It's not some special thing you need to do. It is like perhaps one of the most straightforward doughs. And tomato sauce, also very easy. Tomatoes can very well.
Whoa. Slow down.
It's not
How
complicated.
long do you spend making sauce when you make your own sauce?
Pasta sauce is not pizza sauce, Casey. Please don't tell me you're putting pizza sauce on your pasta or vice versa.
It's just the same thing with oregano added.
Right. I mean, it's really not that different.
But I'm saying, like, those are sturdier ingredients that are harder to screw up, that have a lower degree of difficulty to make something that qualifies as the food. Obviously, it's not good, but it is honest, straightforward. It is the food. Whereas cold cuts and bread I don't think bread is that difficult. Subway somehow manages to screw it up, but cold cuts definitely are difficult. And I would just rather not have cold cuts than have cold cuts that are that bad. And not have bread rather than have bread that's that bad.
I can't reconcile you saying that it's harder to screw up a cold cut, like a slice of ham.
Harder to make, yes.
How can you screw up a slice of an animal easier than you can screw up a complicated multi-part sauce?
Because it's not just a slice of an animal. Like, that's the whole thing. You have to, they put tons of preservatives and goop and everything on those things to try to make them be shelf stable for longer periods of time. They're generally pretty perishable, and you kind of, to do it right, you have to ship them in big giant hunks that you slice on demand, but there's no way in hell Subway's going to do that.
I can't reconcile this. Like, I've left behind.
Have you not had good cold cuts? Maybe this is the problem. Do you not know what cold cuts are supposed to taste
like?
Oh,
absolutely. If I could live off of Boar's Head white American cheese, I would. And this is where you start bitching at me about how American cheese isn't cheese. But no,
white American cheese is what you go for. Cheese is actually one of the easier ones because, again, cheese is inherently is a little more shelf stable than something. I mean, salami is pretty good in that, but like something like sliced turkey or roast beef, that's got a pretty low shelf life compared to cheese. Right, cheese is going to be much more sturdy to a fast food type environment. Cold cuts are hard.
Not mozzarella.
Somebody's trying to do mass market with cold cuts, and they are forced to make this unholy alliance with chemicals, preservatives, and crap products.
But isn't that also true of like every fast food place that has like burgers and stuff? Like it's all the same challenges.
Yeah, I mean burgers burgers have the advantages that ground beef, frozen ground beef, reheated. Like there's a lot of fat that gets you by in those things. Where it's just like, yes, it's terrible. It's grade D meat. It's frozen, but there's a lot of fat involved, and there's actually not that much meat in the grand scheme of things. And you slather a bunch of other stuff on it, and it basically just tastes like salty, squishy fat. It's more difficult to hide bad salami because bad salami has a very distinctive taste. It's a strong taste, and if it's bad, it's bad. But but it's the same thing with burgers to some degree, in that that's why you can tell the difference between Shake Shack and a burger that came to the store frozen, right? Like it's not that big a difference, but you can tell.
Oh, you're so wrong, John.
Also, Jared is a really bad person, so you should.
Well, there's that. So are you basically saying that McDonald's is better than Subway because it's burgers?
Better how? I mean, because McDonald's is kind of its own thing.
I would eat McDonald's before I'd eat Subway.
I would eat Subway before McDonald's if only for health reasons. Because I feel like McDonald's has fewer healthy choices, whereas even Subway will taste really bad. It's going to have less saturated fat and hopefully less calories, depending on what I pick.
Well, McDonald's is also so incredibly strictly like managed and regulated and down to so many sciences, and also they probably do more throughput customer wise. So I think the risk
more
of
throughut than Subway. Subway I think has a pretty good system. I found Subway to be about as consistent as McDonald's. I don't go to McDonald's at all.
Well, but like from like a pure fear of foodborne illnesses perspective, maybe. I think McDonald's is probably a safer bet.
And things are hotter there, especially if you go to hot summer. Like I can tell you that I have eaten Subway much more recently than I've eaten McDonald's, but it's not for taste reasons. It's because someone else wants Subway, someone who shall remain nameless, and I will eat it. Whereas when we want burgers, we go to Five Guys or Shake Shack these days, or In-N-Out when you're in California.
Oh, don't eat Five Guys. Five Guys, I mean, it's delicious,
Five Guys
but
is
it's
better than McDonald's.
Pure fat. It is pure fat.
I know, but it tastes better than McDonald's.
I have to agree with Casey. I haven't had McDonald's in, I think, a few years. But I've had Five Guys recently, and I don't get the appeal. Honestly, I really don't get the appeal of Five Guys. Like, it's not
right.
bad, but it's just like greasy fast food burger. There's nothing special about it. I don't think it's any better than like a Wendy's or an Arby's.
Oh no, it's way better than Wendy's or Arby's. Maybe you're going to the wrong ones. It's a higher class of food than those places. Definitely.
Is it?
Yeah. Yeah, it tastes. The way I describe Five Guys is it's more like a burger that you would make yourself in your house with ingredients that you bought yourself. Which is if you're not an expert chef, is not going to be a great burger, but it definitely does not taste like McDonald's, Burger King, or even In-N-Out, where you totally tell like that's a fast food burger. Five Guys tastes more like a mediocre regular burger.
If I have I haven't had Five Guys in probably as long as Marco's had McDonald's, but if I eat a Five Guys, I forget what they call it, like a mini bacon cheeseburger, whatever the smallest bacon cheeseburger.
Don't get bacon at Five Guys. That's my tip. Don't get bacon. You might think you want it, but don't get it. It tastes better without their bacon is bad.
I don't know about that.
I have not gotten their bacon before, and I still think it's bad.
Wait, hold on. But the point I'm trying to get to, though, is if I eat a mini bacon cheeseburger, whether or not bacon is a good call at Five Guys, if I eat a mini bacon cheeseburger and some of their fries, an hour later, I feel like a beach friggin' whale. I can eat a equivalently sized burger at McDonald's or Wendy's or what have you, and still be a functional human being an hour later. Whereas Five Guys, not so much.
That may be a digestive issue you have. I don't know.
I don't typically have digestive problems.
How do you feel about In-N-Out?
I think that it is very good. I think that if I'm really honest, it is overrated by East Coasters because we don't get it ever. So it's a very good burger, but I don't think it's that much better than any other equivalent chain.
I would lump In-N-Out as in the same family as McDonald's and Burger King, but better than both of them. But I would not put it in the same family as Shake Shack or even Five Guys, because it's more of a fast food style burger. Like everything about it, the bun, the way the burger is prepared, everything about it is a fast food style burger, and it is a higher quality fast food style burger. But it is not. The non-fast food style burgers includes Five Guys and Shake Shack because it's a different style. Like everything about it, the size, the proportion of the meat to the bun, what the bun is made out of, how the burger is prepared, whether the burger has ever been frozen before, whole 9 yards.
See, to me, I honestly object to lumping Five Guys and Shake Shack together. I think Five Guys is way closer to the big fast food chains than it is to Shake Shack.
It's closer to Wendy's because Wendy's has a style of burger that's a little bit different than McDonald's, Burger King, and In-N-Out, I feel like. So, like, as you go on the continuum, I think you go to Wendy's, then go to Five Guys. And I agree with kind of separating it from Shake Shack because Five Guys is obviously not as good as that or not as weird, not as different. I mean, Shake Shack's got like a potato bun and everything. It's got all sorts of weird stuff going on that is not involved in the Five Guys burger. But Five Guys is definitely more straightforward. And I think a lot of this is colored by their fries, which are all over the freaking map among all these ones. And if you had to categorize them just by their fries, I don't know what you would do. Because the fry variability I found to be huge, and even in individual locations.
Wait, where? At McDonald's?
Every place. Like, I mean, just locations like this Shake Shack has good fries, but this Shake Shack has bad fries. How does that even make sense? It's like no consistency. I mean, there's more consistency as you get to McDonald's and Burger King, but...
I was going to say, okay.
No, and I was also not impressed with Five Guys fries, to be honest. I mean...
Yeah, some people love them, some people don't. Now, I've gone to the same Five Guys different times, and sometimes the fries are good, and sometimes they're not. The same exact location. No consistency.
No, really, if you're talking about French fries, it's Chick-fil-A waffle fries or Get Out.
I think you have to put waffle fries aside. I don't think you can put them into the fry. We're talking about steak
that's
fries.
basically hash browns at that point.
Oh, come on.
Well, yeah, waffle fries is a different thing. They're good. I'm not saying waffle fries are great, but you can't bring a waffle fry to a regular fry fight. That's not kosher.
It's cut up potato. You have the weirdest rules.
I mean, like, home fries are also cut up potato. But,
again, yeah, exactly.
You know,
why not include home
food.
Fries and hash browns? Like, why not throw Waffle House in there? They got hash browns.
Oh, my God. It's not a hash brown. It's not even near a hash brown.
Yeah,
you guys are crazy.
Yeah. Now I just want Steak and Shake. I tried making a Steak and Shake Frisco melt last week. I actually didn't get that far off. The hardest part about it that I didn't achieve properly is that Steak and Shake Frisco melts have two very thin burgers. And I don't know how you make a burger that thin. Like I tried, and it wasn't even close.
Yeah, it falls apart. Yeah.
I've never been to Steak and Shake.
Yeah, me neither. I've heard good things about it.
I would imagine you probably have to freeze the patties to make them hold together.
Yeah, no, that's the secret to those very thin ones. They come frozen as hockey pucks, and you put them on the grill, and they cook really fast because fast foods need to cook things really fast.
Well, if it tastes good, I don't really care.
That's like what do you call it? Minute steak, or the other steak that with the holes pounded in it, so it'll cook faster.
Wow. Speaking of, I had White Castle when I was at that bachelor party in Vegas a few weeks back.
So that's the bottom of the rung of hamburgers, speaking of, right?
It was different, but I was fairly inebriated, so it hit the spot at the time.
Drunk Vegas White Castle?
No.
This sounds like a really bad idea.
The same reason people find themselves at Taco Bell. So were you drunk? Oh, yeah. No.
Yeah.
Oh,
right.
no, Taco Bell's great. I'm not kidding either. I love Taco Bell.
Again, bottom of the ladder for Mexican food, right? Taco Bell, we all agree?
That's probably fair.
Yeah, I think generally speaking, the later your fast food place is open, the worse it probably
the worse
is.
the food is, yeah.
I think that's fair too, but I love me some Taco Bell. And actually, their morning crunch wrap, their breakfast crunch wrap, very good, believe it or not.
Wow.
Which has hash brown in it, as it turns out.
Of course it does. Why wouldn't it? I still remember that Saturday Night Live ad where they're adding they're making the ridiculous menu item for Taco Bell. Put it in a tote bag, fill it with salsa. You don't remember that ad?
Nope.
Oh god, I gotta look at pick a title while I look this up.
Pete Jackson on Twitter. Casey has never had a good sub. Couldn't be more obvious. That was 13 minutes ago. 4 minutes ago. Okay, listened a little further. Revised thesis. Hold on. Revised thesis. Casey has never had a good meal of any kind.
I don't want to say it, but some people
sounds about right.
are detecting a trend. Who is it? Who's the chain food hound? It's not you, Casey. There's someone else who's better. Is it Lex, who's really into like going to like Applebee's and TGI Fridays?
Oh, see, curiously enough, I don't particularly care for those. Like, I'll eat there.
No, nobody does. They're terrible. But there's somebody in our circle who like is an aficionado of them. Like, yeah, or you know what I'm talking about. Like that. The bottom rung of the chain restaurants.
Kind of like mid-priced chain restaurant for full table service. And
everything is really bad for you. Yeah, and they have weird meals that appeal. It's kind of like before Guy Fieri came and showed everybody the true meaning of evil, with his terrible restaurants. That
I mean, honestly, there's a lot of those big chain restaurants I've never even been to, because like in the times in my life that I lived in places that had them, I couldn't afford to go there.
What was that one that was like with a B or something? Bennigan's. There you go.
I mean, I used to go to Ponderosa sometimes for like special occasions, like growing up, like. I'd go like once a year to Ponderosa.
I would put it in a similar category as Outback, but I would put in a separate category from TGI Fridays, Applebee's, Bennigan's. Is Bennigan's still around?
So CMF, I went to college in Pennsylvania. That is true. I went to college, however, in the middle of nowhere, Pennsylvania, where
most of Pennsylvania is the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, where basically I went to college in Meadville, Pennsylvania, where the only restaurant in town. There was a Ponderosa, I think, but we never went there. The only restaurant in town that anybody would ever go to was just a Perkins. And so I went to Perkins a lot. Before that, in Ohio, I went to Denny's a lot, which is basically the same restaurant.
Oh, Denny's is awesome.
It's something. It's better than Waffle House.
Oh, it's so good.
Denny's is awesome. Please.
Oh, so good.
I would disagree strongly on that. But
best pancakes in the world, IHOP.
I don't know about that.
That was, in case it's not clear, that was an attempt to ridicule Casey's very low-level tastes.
I love eschatologist in the chat saying, Denny's is a place you wind up. That is perfect.
That is well put.
Well, again, it's open very late, like IHOP, also open late.
Well,
right?
And that's why I went to Perkins in college, because it was open 24 hours. So the interesting story, Tiff and I, our first date, was we drove 40 minutes to Erie, Pennsylvania, the nearest big town. We drove 40 minutes to get there to go to the Olive Garden.
Oh, hell yeah.
It's amazing. It's amazing this relationship lasted.
That was our nice restaurant for our first date.
Again, I would say bottom of the ladder for Italian food restaurants. We all not agree. Name a worse Italian food restaurant than the Olive Garden. It's impossible.
Sbarro's, obviously.
No, I know. Sbarro's has better Italian food than the Olive Garden, hands down.
No,
That's
no,
not true. That is
Hands down.
untrue.
Not at all.
true.
The Olive Garden breadsticks are the only other bread item that I can think of that is similar to Subway
They're
bread.
delicious.
It is basically a hot dog bun with grease sprayed on it.
Yes, and it's wonderful.
That's not bread. That is not a bread.
is
That is not a
absolutely
breadstick.
bread.
It is. Oh, you know. As I once said on my blog, Olive Garden is the gold standard for bad Italian food. Like, they intentionally overcook their pasta so they can be gummed by the senior citizens who are there, and so it won't offend the sensibilities of Middle America. This is not like a made up thing. This is what they do as corporate policy. It is no. Please, Olive Garden. Please.
I don't understand why people like you so much.
Really, of all the fast food places that we've mentioned so far, I think I'd rather eat in an Olive Garden than almost any of them.
Oh, amen.
Margo, what's happening to you? You're in New York. Go have some real Italian food. Please stop going to Olive Garden.
Yeah, if that's an option, sure. But like, if my alternatives are like Subway and Sbarro, like I'm going to Olive Garden.
Amen, brother.
No,
just
I
because
would choose Sbarro over Olive Garden any day. Not because I love Sbarro, but because I hate Olive Garden so much.
that's because it's cool to hate Olive Garden, particularly when you're Italian.
I didn't hate Olive. I didn't know Olive Garden existed until like much later in life, long after I left Long Island. Because when I was in Long Island, either there was an Olive Garden there, or I didn't know they existed. Certainly, never went to one. Right. When I went to, like, people are like, oh, they like Olive Garden. It's like this chain restaurant. I expected it to be not good. Probably bad, but I was not prepared for exactly how bad it was. And then I did internet research. Like, why? How can this be so bad? How can this be a popular
course
chain?
you
It's
did
like,
internet research.
They are intentionally making food to appeal to the tastes of people who don't like Italian food. That's basically what it boils down to.
Oh, okay. Well, you clearly have never been to Fazoli's, which was amazing.
I have never been to Pizzoli's. I don't even know what that is.
It's fast food Italian.
There's the place that's like Italian racial stereotypes. It's like insulting to Italians. It's the Buca di
Beppo
thing.
Yep.
Yes, that is more insulting than Olive Garden.
Yeah, that is pretty bad. I will give you that.
I feel as an Italian when I go to that restaurant, I feel insulted. My heritage feels insulted.
You should. Yeah. I mean, Buca di Beppo is a disaster, but yeah.
To go back a step, I met Aaron at an Applebee's, and you could argue our first date, which we didn't think was a date at the time, but in retrospect was our first date, was at an IHOP. And here we are, almost it's a decade after that first date, and almost a decade into marriage.
Oh, yeah, Marco started out at Olive Garden.
Yep, see? That's what you need. You need food. That's how you build a good relationship.
That's the cornerstone, really.
Subway, fresh is what we do.